She saved the man who destroyed her. In the glittering heart of London's elite, one public humiliation shattered Lydia Hawthorne's world. Duke Adrian Blackmore, the most powerful man in the room, announced to everyone that she was beneath him, unworthy, forgettable. The ballroom erupted in laughter. She walked out alone. Months later, when that same Duke lay dying and called her name in delirium, logic screamed to let him suffer. Pride demanded it. But Lydia made a choice that defied everything. This is their story of cruelty, survival, and the cost of second chances. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The chandelier above the Ashford Ballroom held 3,000 crystals. Lydia Hawthorne knew because she'd counted them twice while pretending not to notice the whispers. She stood near the terrace doors, champagne glass barely touched, watching the season's most eligible bachelors circle the room like wolves sizing up prey. At 23, she was considered practically ancient by their standards. A magistrate's daughter with a sharp tongue and sharper mind, neither of which made her popular among men who preferred their wives decorative and silent. "You're doing it again," her friend Caroline murmured, appearing at her elbow with a rustle of pale pink silk. "Doing what?" "Standing like you're observing a particularly tedious court proceeding instead of enjoying yourself." Lydia smiled despite herself. "Perhaps because I am. Look at them, performing the same tired steps, saying the same meaningless words. It's theater, Caroline, bad theater." "It's society, darling, and you're part of it whether you approve or not." Caroline's eyes drifted across the room. "Though I must say, the Duke of Blackmore is putting on quite the performance tonight. I've never seen him so animated." Lydia followed her gaze to where Adrian Blackmore stood surrounded by a cluster of admirers. Even from across the room, his presence commanded attention. Tall, dark-haired, with features that would have been beautiful if not for the permanent expression of bored disdain he wore like armor. She'd seen him at perhaps a dozen events over the past season. He never danced, rarely spoke, moved through crowds like they were obstacles to be navigated rather than people to engage with. The ton whispered about his vast estates, his mysterious past, his complete disinterest in marriage despite being 32 and heirless. They called him the Ice Duke. Lydia called him insufferable. "Animated isn't the word I'd use," she said. "Arrogant, perhaps? Self-important? Tedious?" Caroline laughed. "You say that about everyone." "Because it's true about everyone here." She meant it. Again, the endless parade of titled men with their rehearsed compliments and calculating eyes exhausted her. They didn't see Lydia. They saw her father's position, her modest dowry, her acceptability as a wife who could manage a household without embarrassing them at dinner parties. None of them had ever asked what she thought about justice reform, or whether she'd read the new treatise on legal philosophy, or what she'd seen in her father's courtroom that made her believe the entire system needed rebuilding from its foundation. They wanted a pretty ornament. She wanted a partner who could think. "Miss Hawthorne!" The voice cut through her thoughts. Lord Pembroke materialized before her, flushed and eager, smelling faintly of brandy and desperation. "I was hoping you might grant me the next dance," he said, already reaching for her hand. "I'm afraid I'm not dancing this evening, my lord." "Nonsense! A beautiful woman like yourself? Not dancing." She pulled her hand back, smile fixed and polite, but voice like steel. He blinked, confused by the refusal. Men like Pembroke rarely heard the word no. They expected compliance, gratitude even, for their attention. "Perhaps later then," he finally managed, retreating with wounded pride evident in every step. Caroline shook her head. "You could at least pretend to be flattered." "Why? So he can spend an entire waltz telling me about his hunting dogs while staring at my neckline?" Lydia took a deliberately long sip of champagne. "I'd rather count crystals." "You're impossible." "I'm honest. There's a difference." The music swelled. Another waltz beginning. Another rotation of the same exhausting dance. Lydia was contemplating escape to the library when she felt it, that peculiar prickling awareness of being watched. She turned. Adrian Blackmore was staring directly at her. Not the casual glance of social assessment, not the quick evaluation men gave women at these events. He was studying her with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve, and finding the pieces didn't fit his expectations. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Lydia lifted her chin, refusing to look away first. She'd learned early that men like him, powerful, privileged, unused to challenge, respected nothing more than strength. Show weakness, and they'd consume you. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, they simply stared at each other. Then the corner of his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like acknowledgement of an opponent taking the field. He looked away first. Victory, small and petty, warmed her chest. "Did the Duke of Blackmore just notice you?" Caroline's voice had gone up an octave. "He looked in my direction. That's not the same thing." "Lydia, he never looks at anyone. Last season, Lady Pemberton practically threw herself at his feet, and he stepped around her like she was furniture." Caroline grabbed her arm. "This is significant. This is nothing. He was probably trying to remember where he'd seen me before." But even as she said it, unease crawled up her spine. She didn't like being noticed by men like Adrian Blackmore. They were dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with scandal and everything to do with power, the kind that could ruin a woman's reputation with a single cutting remark, that could close doors and destroy futures without ever raising a hand. The music shifted. Conversations ebbed and flowed around them. Lydia was just beginning to relax when she heard it, her name, spoken in a voice designed to carry. "Miss Hawthorne? You're asking about Miss Hawthorne?" Lord Hartley's voice, loud enough to turn heads. He was standing near the refreshment table with a group that included several influential members of society, and Adrian Blackmore. Lydia's stomach dropped. "I only mention her because she's unattached," someone else was saying. "Lady Worthington, probably. Notorious gossip and social arbiter. Perfectly respectable family. Her father is well regarded. Modest fortune, but her bloodline is acceptable. I thought perhaps—" "No." One word. Flat. Final. Adrian Blackmore's voice cut through the conversation like a blade through silk. "Your Grace?" Lady Worthington sounded confused. "I merely thought to make an introduction. I said no." The conversations around them were dying like candles in a sudden wind. People were turning, sensing drama, the way sharks sense blood. Lydia couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She was watching her own humiliation unfold in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "But surely," Lady Worthington pressed, "allow me to be perfectly clear." Adrian's voice grew louder, ensuring everyone could hear. "Miss Hawthorne is pleasant enough to observe from a distance, I'm sure, but she would be the absolute last woman in this room, in this city, that I would ever consider worthy of serious attention." The silence that followed was deafening. Lydia felt it like a physical blow, the weight of every eye in the ballroom turning toward her, measuring her reaction, cataloging her humiliation for future gossip. Her face burned, her hands shook, but she didn't run. "Her manners are tolerable," Adrian continued, and now there was something cruel in his tone, something that wanted to wound. "But not handsome enough to tempt me, not clever enough to interest me, not accomplished enough to recommend her. She is, in every meaningful way, utterly beneath my notice." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Not many. Most people had the decency to look uncomfortable. But enough. Enough to cement the moment, to ensure that tomorrow morning, every breakfast table in London would be discussing how the Ice Duke had publicly destroyed Lydia Hawthorne. Caroline's hand found hers squeezing hard. Lydia couldn't look at her, couldn't look at anyone. If she met their eyes, pity, or worse, satisfaction, she would shatter. She set down her champagne glass with a hand that barely trembled, smoothed her skirts, lifted her head. Then she walked. Not running, not fleeing, walking with her spine straight and her shoulders back, moving through the crowd that parted before her like water. She heard the whispers starting before she'd even reached the door. "Did you see her face? Absolutely mortifying. I always said she had ideas above her station. Poor thing, she'll never recover from this." The cool night air hit her face like a blessing. The terrace was mercifully empty, overlooking gardens that sprawled into darkness. Lydia gripped the stone balustrade hard enough to hurt. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't give them that satisfaction. But something inside her chest was breaking, splintering into pieces she wasn't sure she could put back together. Beneath his notice. The words echoed in her head, poisonous and invasive. She'd spent years building armor against society's judgments, telling herself their opinions didn't matter, that their shallow standards of worth were meaningless. But this was different. This wasn't rejection, it was annihilation. Adrian Blackmore had used her as a public example, a cautionary tale, a demonstration of his power and her irrelevance. And she hadn't even done anything to provoke it. That was the worst part. She'd barely exchanged 2 words with the man in her entire life. She meant nothing to him, less than nothing, just a convenient target for whatever game he was playing. "Lydia?" Caroline appeared beside her, breathless. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what possessed him to say such things. Everyone inside is shocked. Lady Pemberton called him a brute." "Don't!" Lydia's voice came out rough. "Don't make excuses for him. Don't pretend this wasn't deliberate." "Then what? Why would he?" "Because he can." The words tasted bitter. "Because I'm nobody, and he's a duke, and that's how this world works. Power crushes anyone foolish enough to exist in its path." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Lydia finally looked at her friend. "I stood in that ballroom doing nothing, bothering no one, and he decided to destroy me for entertainment. What recourse do I have? What defense? None. Because he has title, wealth, influence, and I have nothing he can't take away with a few cutting words." Caroline's eyes shone with tears Lydia refused to shed. "You have worth beyond his opinion." "Do I?" Lydia laughed, and it sounded broken even to her own ears. "By tomorrow, every door in London will close. No decent family will receive me. I'll be the woman the Duke of Blackmore found beneath contempt. That's my legacy now. That's all I'll ever be to these people." "Then leave. Come stay with me in Bath. We'll—" "Run away?" The anger finally surfaced, hot and clarifying. "Let him win completely?" "This isn't about winning. Everything is about winning." Lydia's hands clenched on the stone. Every interaction, every social engagement, every carefully calibrated conversation, it's all a game designed to sort us into winners and losers. And tonight he made very clear which category I belong to. She pushed away from the balustrade, decision crystallizing like ice in her chest. "I'm leaving London, not to hide, to rebuild, because I refuse to let Adrian Blackmore's cruelty define the rest of my life. I refuse to give him that power." "Lydia, I mean it, Caroline. I'm done with this world. Done with men who measure worth by bloodlines and bank accounts. Done with pretending any of this matters." She started toward the steps leading to the garden path. "Tell my father I've taken a carriage home. Tell him I'm sorry I couldn't be what they wanted." "What who wanted?" "All of them." Lydia gestured back toward the ballroom, toward the life she was walking away from. "Society, suitors, everyone who looked at me and saw something lacking." She descended into the garden, leaving Caroline on the terrace. The darkness swallowed her, and for the first time all evening, she could breathe. The carriage ride home passed in a blur. Her father's townhouse was quiet. He'd stayed at his club for the evening, sparing himself the tedium of the Ashford ball. Small mercies. Lydia climbed the stairs to her room, dismissed her maid, and finally, blessedly alone, allowed herself to feel it. Not tears. She still wouldn't give Adrian Blackmore tears, but rage. Pure, focused, burning rage at the injustice of it. At a world that allowed men like him to wield cruelty as casually as other people wore gloves. At her own powerlessness to fight back. She stood at her window, looking out over London's glittering lights, and made a vow in the darkness. She would never forgive Adrian Blackmore, never forget what he'd done, never return to a society that measured worth by status instead of substance. And if she ever saw him again, she would make absolutely certain he understood exactly what his casual cruelty had cost. Not in his language of social destruction, in hers. Truth. Unflinching and unavoidable. The Ice Duke thought her beneath his notice? Fine. Let him live in his frozen kingdom alone. She was done trying to belong in a world that had never wanted her anyway. 4 months later, Lydia had learned to love the quiet. Her father's country estate in Derbyshire was nothing like London. No glittering ballrooms, no calculated conversations, no daily reminders of her public humiliation. Just rolling hills, ancient trees, and the kind of peace that let her remember who she'd been before Adrian Blackmore had tried to erase her. She'd thrown herself into her father's work. He was older now, his hands sometimes trembling when he wrote, his memory occasionally faltering on legal precedents he'd once quoted flawlessly. He needed help, and Lydia had both the mind and motivation to provide it. They worked side by side in his study, reviewing cases, debating interpretations, preparing arguments. The local magistrates had been skeptical at first. A woman involving herself in legal matters was unusual, potentially scandalous. But Lydia was her father's daughter. She didn't ask permission. She simply proved herself indispensable. "You're better at this than half the barristers in London," her father had told her last week, pride evident in every word. "Sharper, more thorough, less concerned with performing brilliance than achieving justice." It was the finest compliment she'd ever received. London felt like a lifetime ago. The whispers had eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals and fresh victims. Caroline wrote weekly, full of gossip Lydia no longer cared about, and invitations she never accepted. She'd built a new life. Smaller, perhaps, but hers. The knock on the study door came just after noon on a Tuesday. "Sir?" Their butler, Morrison, appeared in the doorway looking unusually flustered. "There's a messenger from London. He says it's urgent." Her father looked up from the contract he was reviewing. "From London? Who?" "The Duke of Blackmore's estate, sir." Lydia's quills stopped mid-stroke. Ink pooled on the parchment, spreading like poison. "Send him away," she said flatly. "Lydia," her father began. "I said send him away. Whatever Adrian Blackmore wants, my answer is no." Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "Miss, he says the Duke is dying." The words hung in the air like smoke. "I don't care if he's already dead," Lydia said. "The answer is still no." "Lydia Elizabeth Hawthorne." Her father's voice carried the weight of authority he usually reserved for the courtroom. "You will at least hear what the messenger has to say." She wanted to refuse, wanted to throw the man out personally, let Adrian Blackmore die alone in whatever cold castle he called home, forgotten and unmissed. But her father was watching her with that expression that said he knew exactly what she was thinking and expected better. With effort, she set down her ruined quill. 5 minutes. The messenger was young, road-worn, and visibly exhausted. He'd ridden hard from London, 2 days' journey at killing pace. "Miss Hawthorne," he bowed awkwardly. "I apologize for the intrusion, but the situation is desperate. The Duke is gravely ill. Fever took him 6 days ago. The physicians have done everything they can, but he's not responding. He's—" The man's voice cracked. "He's delirious, calling for you. Has been for 3 days straight. Nothing else. Just your name, over and over." Lydia felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just cold, empty nothing. "Then he'll die disappointed," she said. "I wish him peace in his final hours. You may go." "Miss, please." "You heard her answer," her father said quietly. "Show him out, Morrison." The messenger left, shoulders slumped in defeat. Her father waited until the door closed before speaking. "You're well within your rights to refuse." "I know. He treated you abominably, cruelly, without justification." I know that too. But you're not cruel, Lydia. That's the difference between you and him." She looked at her father, really looked, saw the age in his face, the wisdom earned through decades of weighing justice against vengeance, mercy against desert. "He deserves to die alone," she said softly. "After what he did to me." "Perhaps. But you deserve to make that choice freely, not from a place of pain." Her father moved to the window, looking out over the estate he'd built through careful work and honest service. "I've sent hundreds of men to their fates, Lydia. Some deserved worse than they received. Some deserved better. But the thing I learned over all those years is that justice isn't about giving people what they deserve. It's about being the person you can live with being. You think I should go. It wasn't a question. I think you should decide what you can live with, not tomorrow, not next week, 20 years from now, when you look back on this moment. What choice lets you sleep peacefully?" Lydia closed her eyes. She saw the ballroom, heard his voice declaring her beneath notice, felt the weight of 300 people watching her humiliation become entertainment, beneath his notice. But she also heard something else, the messenger's voice. "Calling for you. Just your name, over and over. Why?" That was the question that wouldn't let her rest. Why would Adrian Blackmore, in his final hours, stripped of pride and pretense by fever, call for her? A woman he'd publicly dismissed as unworthy of his attention? It made no sense unless— "I need to know why," she said aloud. Her father turned. Why? Why he destroyed me that night, why he chose me specifically, why if I meant so little he's calling for me now. She opened her eyes. "I can't move forward until I understand." "Then go. Hear what he has to say. Get your answers." Her father smiled sadly. "And then decide if he deserves forgiveness or if some debts die unpaid." Lydia packed a single bag, ignored Caroline's frantic letter begging her to reconsider visiting Blackmore's estate, and rode out before dawn the next morning. The journey to Blackmore Hall took 2 days of hard riding through increasingly wild country. The estate sat on the edge of Yorkshire, surrounded by moors that stretched to the horizon like an ocean frozen mid-wave. The house itself was massive, dark, beautiful in a severe way that reminded her uncomfortably of its owner. It rose from the landscape like it had grown there, all stone and sharp angles and windows that reflected the sky without revealing what lay behind them. The servants who met her seemed shocked by her arrival. Miss Hawthorne, the housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, looked like she hadn't slept in days. "We didn't— the messenger said you refused. I changed my mind." "Where is he?" "In his chambers." "Miss, you should know he's very ill. The fever has him in its grip. He says things, sees things that aren't there. It's disturbing." "I've sat vigil before. I can handle disturbing." Mrs. Davies studied her face, seeming to find whatever she was looking for. "This way." The ducal chambers occupied the entire east wing. They passed through sitting rooms and dressing rooms before finally reaching the bedroom itself. The smell hit her first. Sickness, sweat, the peculiar sweetness of fever burning through a body too fast. Heavy curtains blocked most of the light. A fire roared in the grate despite the summer warmth. And in the massive four-poster bed, Adrian Blackmore lay dying. Lydia had seen death before. Her father's work brought her into contact with it more often than most women of her class. She knew what it looked like when life was slipping away. Adrian Blackmore was losing that fight. He was barely recognizable as the arrogant duke who'd humiliated her. His face was flushed with fever, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. His hands clutched the sheets, tendons standing out like cables under skin that had gone translucent. But it was his voice that stopped her heart. "Lydia." Barely a whisper. Desperate. Broken. "Lydia, please, I'm sorry. So sorry." She froze in the doorway. Mrs. Davies moved to the bedside, laying a cool cloth on his forehead. "Your Grace, you have a visitor. Miss Hawthorne has come." His eyes opened, fever-bright, unfocused, searching. "Lydia?" He tried to sit up, fell back against the pillows. "You're here. You came. I was afraid you wouldn't—" "Hush now, Your Grace. Save your strength." "No." The word came out fierce, despite his weakness. "Need to tell her. Need her to understand before it's too late. Before I lose the chance." Lydia stepped into the room, keeping her distance. "I'm here. What do you need to tell me?" His head turned toward her voice. For a moment, his eyes focused, truly seeing her. "I was wrong," he said. "Everything I said. All of it. Wrong. Cruel. Unforgivable." "You're delirious," she said flatly. "This is fever talking." "No." He shook his head, grimacing at the pain the movement caused. "Known for days I'm dying gives you clarity. All the things I thought mattered, title, pride, maintaining distance, none of it means anything now. Just you, just this, the worst thing I ever did." Lydia felt something crack in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Why did you do it? That night. I'd done nothing to you." "I know." His laugh turned into a cough that shook his whole frame. When he could speak again, his voice was raw. "That's the terrible part. You did nothing except be brave and brilliant and completely immune to the performance everyone else was putting on. You saw through all of it, including me." "I don't understand." "You looked at me like I was just a man. Not a duke. Not a title. Just a man. And I couldn't bear it. Couldn't bear that you saw what I'd spent years hiding." "What?" "That I'm empty." The words came out broken. that everything I am is performance and pretense and power built on nothing real. You were genuine. You had substance, and I destroyed you for it because I couldn't stand being reminded of everything I'm not." Lydia stood frozen, processing words that made no sense coming from the man who'd haunted her nightmares for months. "That's not an excuse," Adrian continued, fighting for consciousness. "Nothing excuses what I did, but it's the truth, and I'm running out of time to say it, so I need you to know. What I said that night, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. It was about me being a coward who attacked the only real thing in that entire ballroom because I was too afraid to admit I wanted what you had." "What I had?" Her voice cracked. "You took everything from me." "No." His hand reached out blindly, finding nothing but air. "I took your place in that world. But you had something before I destroyed it. You had yourself, your principles, your strength. I've spent my entire life being what other people needed me to be. I don't even know who I am when I'm alone. But you knew. You were complete. And I hated you for it." He was fading again, slipping back into delirium. But before he went, his eyes found hers one last time. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "not because I'm dying, because I hurt you. And you deserved better, deserved everything I was too broken to give." Then the fever took him again, and he was lost to it, thrashing and mumbling words that made no sense. Mrs. Davies appeared at Lydia's elbow. "You should rest, miss. You've had a long journey. We have rooms prepared." "No." The word came out before Lydia could think. "I'll stay." "Miss?" She didn't know why, couldn't explain the impulse that made her move to the bedside, take the cloth from Mrs. Davies's hands, and settle into the chair beside Adrian's bed. But her father's words echoed in her head. "What choice lets you sleep peacefully?" And she knew, with absolute certainty, that leaving him to die alone, even after everything he'd done, would haunt her forever. "I'll stay," she repeated. "Whatever happens next, I need to see it through." Mrs. Davies nodded slowly. "I'll have food and fresh water brought up. And miss?" "Thank you. He has no one else. I don't think he's ever had anyone else." She left Lydia alone with the dying Duke, and the weight of a choice she still didn't fully understand. Lydia dipped the cloth in cool water, wrung it out, and laid it gently on Adrian's burning forehead. His eyes flickered open, unfocused, but searching. "Still here," she said quietly. "I'm still here." He settled at the sound of her voice, some of the tension leaving his frame, and Lydia sat vigil, watching over the man who'd tried to destroy her, and wondered what the hell she was doing. The answer, she suspected, wouldn't come until she decided whether some debts were worth forgiving, or if some people were worth saving despite the pain they'd caused. Either way, she wasn't leaving until she knew. The first night, Lydia almost left 3 times. Each time she'd stand, intending to walk out and let the servants handle whatever came next. Each time, Adrian would stir, reaching for something invisible in his delirium, and she'd find herself sitting back down. It wasn't forgiveness. She was absolutely certain of that. It was something else, something that felt uncomfortably like unfinished business. By the second night, she'd stopped pretending she understood her own motives. "You should eat something, miss." Mrs. Davies appeared with a tray, soup, bread, tea that had gone cold an hour ago. "You'll make yourself sick." "I'm fine." "With respect, you're not. You've barely left this room in 36 hours. Lydia looked down at the cloth in her hands, now warm from Adrian's fever. When had she picked it up again? She couldn't remember. "How long has he been like this?" she asked, not really wanting the answer. "The fever started 6 days ago. Came on sudden. He was perfectly well at breakfast, collapsed before dinner. We sent for physicians immediately. They've tried everything." Mrs. Davies' voice cracked. "Bloodletting, poultices, every remedy in their books. Nothing touches it. They said—" She stopped. "What did they say?" "That we should prepare for the worst, that men don't recover from fevers this severe, that it's only a matter of time." Adrian thrashed suddenly, nearly knocking over the water basin. Lydia caught it, steadied it, then pressed her hand to his shoulder, firmly, the way you'd calm a spooked horse. He stilled under her touch. "There," she murmured. "You're safe. Rest." His eyes opened, clouded, unfocused, searching. "Don't leave," he said, voice hoarse. Please, everyone leaves, always. I'm here. The words came automatically. I'm not leaving. He seemed to relax at that, sinking back into the pillows. Within moments, he was unconscious again, breathing shallow and rapid. Mrs. Davies watched the exchange with something like hope in her eyes. He responds to you. He hasn't responded to anyone else. Not the physicians, not me, not even his valet who's been with him since childhood. That doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? The housekeeper moved to tidy the nightstand, hands busy with the nervous energy of someone who needed to do something, anything. The Duke has always been distant, even as a boy, from what the older staff tell me. His father was cruel, expected perfection, punished anything less. The young master learned early to hide everything real, show nothing that could be used against him. Lydia felt an unwelcome stirring of sympathy and crushed it immediately. That doesn't excuse what he did to me. No, miss, it doesn't. Mrs. Davies met her eyes. But it might explain it. Hurt people hurt people. That's just how it works. That's too simple. Most true things are. Before Lydia could respond, Adrian convulsed, back arching off the bed. His hands clawed at the sheets, face contorted in agony. No, please, I didn't mean... Words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and broken. Father, please, I'll do better. I'll be better. Just don't... He's not here, Lydia said sharply, gripping his hand without thinking. Your father's not here. You're safe. But Adrian was lost to whatever nightmare held him, trapped in a past that clearly hadn't loosened its grip even in delirium. I tried. I always tried. Never good enough. Nothing I did. His breathing hitched, tears streaming down his fever-flushed face. Just wanted you to see me. Just once. Just... He broke off, choking on words that wouldn't come. Lydia looked at Mrs. Davies, who'd gone pale. How bad was his father? Bad enough that the entire staff celebrated when the old Duke died. That tell you what you need to know? It did. Lydia had seen enough cruelty in her father's courtroom to recognize its patterns. The men who'd been beaten as boys often became men who beat others, with fists or words or calculated public humiliations designed to make someone else feel as small as they once had. The cycle repeated until someone was strong enough to break it. Get me more cold water, she said, and whatever herbs you have for fever. Willow bark if you've got it. The physicians already tried. I'm not a physician. Maybe that's the point. Lydia wrung out the cloth again, laid it across Adrian's forehead with hands that were steadier than she felt. They're trying to cure the fever. I'm trying to keep him alive long enough for his body to cure itself. There's a difference. Mrs. Davies nodded and hurried out. Alone with Adrian again, Lydia allowed herself to really look at him. Not as the Duke who'd destroyed her, but as a man fighting a losing battle against something invisible and merciless. His confession from yesterday kept playing in her mind. I destroyed you for it because I couldn't stand being reminded of everything I'm not. She wanted to dismiss it as fever talking. Wanted to believe he was lying, manipulating, performing even in delirium. But the raw pain in his voice when he'd begged his dead father for approval, that wasn't performance. That was truth. Ugly and honest and more real than anything she'd heard in London's glittering ballrooms. Why did you really call for me? She asked the unconscious man. Of all the people in your life, why did your fever brain decide I was the one you needed? No answer. Just the ragged sound of his breathing, the crackle of the fire, the wind howling across the moors outside. Lydia settled back into the chair and prepared for another long night. The crisis came on the third day, just before dawn. Lydia had dozed off. She hadn't meant to, but exhaustion finally caught up with her. She woke to the sound of Adrian screaming. Not words, just raw, animal sounds of agony. His entire body seized, muscles locking, spine bowing. The fever had spiked so high she could feel the heat radiating off him from 2 feet away. Mrs. Davies! Lydia was already moving, pressing her hands to Adrian's chest, trying to keep him from thrashing off the bed entirely. Get the physician, now! The housekeeper appeared in the doorway, took one look, and ran. Adrian? Lydia leaned in close, speaking directly into his ear. Adrian, I need you to listen to me. You need to calm down. You're making it worse. He didn't respond. Couldn't respond. He was drowning in fever, and there was nothing she could do except hold on and refuse to let him go under alone. "You don't get to die," she said, voice hard. "Do you hear me? You don't get to make your confession and then escape into death before facing the consequences. That's coward's way out, and whatever else you are, I don't think you're a coward." His eyes opened, wild, unseeing. "Lydia!" Just her name, barely audible. "I'm here. I'm right here. But you need to fight. I can't do this for you. You have to fight." "Can't. Too hard." "Of course it's hard. Everything worth doing is hard." She gripped his face, forcing him to focus on her. "You think I wanted to come here? You think forgiving you will be easy? It won't be. It'll be the hardest thing I ever do, but I'm willing to try if you're willing to live long enough to earn it." Something shifted in his expression. Awareness, maybe, fighting its way through the fever's grip. "Why?" The word came out broken. "After what I did, why would you?" "Because someone has to break the cycle," she said. "Your father hurt you, you hurt me. If you die, that's where it ends, with more pain, more cruelty, nothing learned. But if you live—" She paused, surprised by her own words. "If you live, maybe something different becomes possible. I don't care what you deserve. I care about what I can live with. And I can't live with walking away from someone who needs help, even if that someone is you." The physician burst in, black bag in hand, face grim. He took one look at Adrian and started barking orders. Ice, more blankets, strange-smelling tinctures that made Lydia's eyes water. "Miss, you should leave," he said. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." "No." "Miss Hawthorne, I said no." She didn't move from Adrian's side. "Whatever happens, I'm staying." The physician looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him it was pointless. He nodded curtly and went to work. The next hours blurred together. Ice packs, forced medicine, Adrian fighting them every step, lost to fever dreams that made him dangerous, thrashing, striking out, nearly breaking the physician's nose before Lydia caught his arm. "Stop," she commanded. "Look at me. Focus." And somehow, impossibly, he did. His eyes found hers through the chaos, held on like she was an anchor in a storm trying to pull him under. "That's it," she said, softer now. "Stay with me. Just a little longer." "Tired. I know, but you don't get to rest yet. Soon. Not yet." The physician worked around them, doing things Lydia didn't fully understand with instruments that looked medieval. She kept her attention on Adrian, kept talking to him, kept him tethered to consciousness through sheer force of will. "Tell me about the estate," she said. "Blackmore Hall. What's it like when you're not dying in it?" His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Beautiful, wild, built by my great-grandfather. He was mad, probably. Wanted a fortress no one could touch." "Sounds lonely." "It is, always has been." His breathing evened slightly. "I used to ride for hours as a boy. Just me and my horse and all that empty space. Father hated it, said I was wasting time that should be spent on studies." "What did you think?" "That the moors were the only place I could breathe." Lydia understood that better than she wanted to admit. "Why didn't you leave? After your father died, why stay in a place that hurt you?" "Where would I go?" The question sounded genuinely confused. "This is what I am. The Duke, the estate, the responsibilities. Without it, I'm nothing." "That's not true, isn't it?" His eyes closed. "You said it yourself that night. I'm not clever enough, not accomplished enough, not worthy enough." "You were right. Take away the title and what's left? Just an empty man playing at nobility." "I never said those things. You said them about me." He went still. "Did I?" "You don't even remember." The realization hit her like cold water. "You destroyed my reputation, turned me into a cautionary tale, and you don't even remember the exact words." "I remember." His voice dropped to barely audible. "I remember every word. Thought if I claimed you said them first, it would hurt less when I said them about you. Stupid, cruel, but that's what I did." The physician stepped back, wiping his hands. "The fever's breaking. Not by much, but it's breaking. If he survives the next few hours, he might pull through." "Might?" Lydia looked up sharply. "That's the best I can offer, miss. His body's been through hell. Even if the fever breaks completely, there could be damage to his heart, his lungs, his mind. We won't know until he's conscious and coherent. He packed his instruments. I'll return this evening. Keep him cool. Keep him calm. And Miss Hawthorne? Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You've gotten him farther than medical science could. He left, taking Mrs. Davies with him to prepare more ice. Lydia slumped back in the chair, exhausted to her bones. Still here, Adrian murmured. Still here. Why? She'd been asking herself that question for 3 days straight. I don't know anymore. Maybe because you're the first person who ever saw through my performance the way I saw through yours. Maybe because I understand what it's like to be measured against impossible standards and found wanting. Or maybe I'm just stubborn and refuse to let you win by dying. Not winning. Losing. Been losing my whole life. Then stop. She leaned forward, meeting his eyes. Stop losing. Start fighting. Not for your title or your estate or your father's ghost, for yourself, for the chance to be something other than what everyone expected. Don't know how. Figure it out. You're supposedly brilliant. At least, that's what everyone in London says. The Ice Duke, too clever for ordinary mortals, above our petty concerns. Her voice hardened. Prove it. Show me that man actually exists instead of just being another performance. Something sparked in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or challenge accepted. You don't pull punches. Never have. One of my many flaws, according to society, along with being too opinionated, too educated, too willing to speak when I should stay silent. She smiled without humor. We're quite a pair, really. You performing perfection to hide your emptiness. Me refusing to perform at all and being punished for it. You're not flawed. You're extraordinary. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't do that. Don't try to compliment your way out of what you did. You destroyed me because I reminded you of your own failures. Own it. Don't dress it up as admiration. He flinched like she'd struck him. You're right. I'm sorry. That was habit. Saying what I think people want to hear instead of the truth. Then tell me the truth. Why did you really do it? Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he'd slipped back into unconsciousness. Then, because you looked at me in that ballroom, and I saw myself reflected back. Not the Duke, not the performance, just a man. Ordinary, insufficient. And I panicked. I needed to hurt you before you could expose me, needed everyone to look at you instead of me, needed to prove I was still in control. You weren't, though, in control. No, I've never been in control, just pretending, always pretending. His hand found hers, grip weak but intentional. I'm tired of pretending, Lydia, so tired. She should pull away, should maintain distance, should remember that 3 days of nursing didn't erase months of pain, but his hand was burning with fever and shaking with exhaustion, and pulling away felt like cruelty she didn't want to add to everything else between them. Then stop, she said quietly. When you recover, if you recover, stop pretending. Be real, even if it's terrifying. What if real isn't good enough? What if it is? The question hung between them, fragile and dangerous. The fever broke completely just after midnight on the 4th day. Lydia felt it happen. The sudden shift from burning heat to normal warmth, the easing of his breathing, the way his body finally, blessedly relaxed into genuine sleep instead of fevered unconsciousness. She sat back, hands trembling with relief she hadn't let herself feel until this moment. He would live. Adrian Blackmore, the man who'd tried to destroy her, would survive. And now she had to decide what that meant, Mrs. Davies appeared in the doorway, took one look at Adrian's peaceful face, and burst into tears. Thank heaven, she sobbed. Thank heaven, and thank you, miss. You saved him. The physicians couldn't, but you did. I didn't save him. He saved himself. I just stayed. That's the same thing when someone's that alone. Maybe it was. Lydia stood on shaking legs, every muscle screaming from 4 days in a chair. I need to step out, get some air. Can you? I'll watch him. Go. Rest. You've earned it. She made it to the hallway before her legs gave out. She didn't fall, just sank against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor like a child, head in her hands. What had she done? She'd come here for answers, for closure, maybe for revenge disguised as mercy. Instead, she'd spent 4 days fighting to save the life of a man she should hate. And somewhere in those exhausting, terrifying hours, her hatred had not disappeared, but complicated, deepened, become something she didn't have words for. He'd been vulnerable, real, the opposite of everything he'd shown the world. And she'd responded to that realness in ways that made her question everything she thought she knew about justice, forgiveness, and what people deserved. "Miss Hawthorne?" She looked up to find a young maid hovering nervously. "The housekeeper said you might want a room to rest. We've prepared the blue guest chamber. It's quiet, overlooks the gardens." "Thank you." Lydia hauled herself upright through sheer will. "That's very kind." The room was indeed quiet, beautiful in an understated way that surprised her. She'd expected ostentatious displays of wealth. Instead, she found comfortable furniture, soft colors, windows that let in the moonlight. A room designed for rest, not performance. She should sleep, knew she desperately needed it, but her mind wouldn't settle. Tomorrow, or today technically, since dawn was already creeping across the horizon, Adrian would wake up, truly wake up, fever-free and coherent. And they would have to talk. Really talk. Not fever confessions and deathbed apologies, but honest conversation between two people who'd hurt each other and somehow ended up saving each other anyway. Lydia had no idea what to say. "Sorry for hating you seemed insufficient. Thank you for not dying was ridiculous. I don't forgive you, but I don't want you dead." Felt closer to truth, but sounded insane spoken aloud. She settled on the window seat, watching the sun rise over the moors, and tried to prepare herself for whatever came next. Adrian woke slowly, like someone surfacing from deep water. The first thing he noticed was the absence of pain. No fire in his blood. No crushing weight on his chest. Just quiet. Peace. The second thing he noticed was Lydia, asleep in the chair beside his bed. She was curled up awkwardly, head tilted at an angle that would leave her neck screaming when she woke. Her hair had come loose from its pins, falling around her face in waves that made her look younger, softer, beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with London standards and everything to do with strength worn like armor. Memory flooded back in pieces. The fever, the delirium, calling for her like a drowning man calls for air, and she'd come. After everything he'd done to her, she'd come. He tried to sit up, failed, fell back with a groan that woke her instantly. "Don't move!" Her voice was rough with sleep. "You'll hurt yourself." Too late for that. He managed a weak smile. "Apparently I almost died." "You did die. Twice. We brought you back." She stood, moving to pour water from the pitcher on the nightstand. "Here." Slowly. He drank, the simple act of swallowing exhausting. "How long?" 4 days since I arrived. 6 since the fever started." She set the glass down, studying him with an expression he couldn't read. "The physician says you'll recover fully, but it'll take time. Weeks, probably." "And you stayed?" "I stayed." "Why?" Lydia looked at him for a long moment. "I've been asking myself that for 4 days straight. I still don't have a good answer." "Try." "Because..." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Because dying felt like an escape. And I wasn't willing to let you escape before facing what you'd done. That's not mercy, Adrian. That's just unfinished business." He should feel grateful, should say thank you and mean it. Instead, he felt something that might have been relief mixed with terror. Because she was right. He had wanted to escape. Into death, into fever, into anything that would let him avoid facing her, himself, the wreckage he'd made. "I don't deserve your help," he said quietly. "I know. I helped anyway. Don't make me regret it." "I'll try not to." He studied her face, seeing things he'd missed before, the dark circles under her eyes, the exhaustion carved into every line. "You look terrible." She laughed, surprised. "Thank you. You look like death warmed over, so we're even." "Fair." He tried to sit up again, managed it this time with her reluctant assistance. "Lydia, I meant what I said. During the fever. I remember most of it, I think. The confession, the..." "Stop." She held up a hand. "Don't. Not yet. You just woke up. I haven't slept properly in days. Neither of us is ready for that conversation." "When then?" When you can stand on your own 2 feet, when I've had time to think, when we're both capable of honesty instead of whatever this is. She gestured vaguely between them. Fever confessions don't count. If you mean what you said, you'll say it again when you're well, and then we'll see. It was more than fair, more than he had any right to expect. One question, though, he said. Just one. She sighed. What? Do you hate me? Lydia went very still. The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to unpack. I should, she finally said. I wanted to, I tried to, but hate's exhausting, and I'm too tired to maintain it. She met his eyes. Ask me again in a week. Maybe I'll have a better answer. That's fair. Nothing about this is fair, Adrian. Not what you did. Not what I'm doing now. Not any of it. She moved towards the door. I'm going to sleep. Mrs. Davies will check on you. Don't try to get up. Don't try to be noble. Just rest. Lydia? She paused in the doorway. Thank you for staying, for fighting, for everything. Don't thank me yet, she said. We haven't reached the hard part. Then she was gone, leaving him alone with his thoughts, and the terrifying realization that surviving the fever might have been the easy part. Now came the real test, becoming someone worthy of the second chance she'd given him, if that was even possible. For the first week of his recovery, Adrian Blackmore tried to be the man Lydia had challenged him to become. He stayed in bed when ordered, took his medicine without complaint, answered the physician's questions honestly instead of with the dismissive arrogance that usually served as his shield. But trying and succeeding were different things entirely. You need to eat more than that, Your Grace. Mrs. Davies stood over him with a bowl of broth that smelled like punishment. I'm not hungry. You're wasting away. Another few days like this and you'll be back where you started. Adrian pushed the bowl away. Then I'll be back where I started. Leave it. The housekeeper's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She simply set the bowl on the nightstand and left, closing the door with more force than necessary. Alone again, Adrian stared at the ceiling and wondered why recovery felt harder than dying had. The fever had been simple: fight or surrender, live or die. Clear choices with clear consequences. This was different. This required him to exist in the space between what he'd been and what he might become, and that space felt like standing at the edge of a cliff in the dark, not knowing if the next step would find solid ground or empty air. Lydia had been avoiding him. Oh, she checked in twice daily, brief professional visits where she asked about his condition and left before any real conversation could start. She was polite, distant, nothing like the woman who'd fought beside him through the fever, who'd demanded he live with a fierceness that had pulled him back from the edge. That woman had disappeared, replaced by someone who looked at him like he was a problem she was still trying to decide whether to solve. He didn't blame her, but it hurt anyway. On the 8th day, he got out of bed, not because he felt strong enough, because lying there one more minute would have driven him completely mad. His legs shook, his vision swam. He made it approximately 6 steps before his knees buckled and he caught himself on the bedpost, breathing hard. What are you doing? Lydia's voice cut through the room like a whip. She stood in the doorway, still in her morning dress, hair pinned up in a style that was starting to come loose. She looked exhausted and furious in equal measure. Walking, Adrian managed. You're collapsing. There's a difference. She crossed the room in quick strides, grabbed his arm, and hauled him back toward the bed with surprising strength. The physician said at least 2 more weeks before you attempt anything this stupid. The physician isn't the one going mad from boredom. Then read a book, stare out the window. I don't care, but you don't get to undo 4 days of work because you're impatient. She practically shoved him onto the mattress. You could have hurt yourself, or worse. Would you care if I had? The question came out before he could stop it, raw and needy and completely exposing everything he'd been trying to hide. Lydia went very still. That's not fair, she said quietly. I know, I'm sorry. Forget I asked. I can't forget it. You said it. So answer me this. Why did you ask? What answer were you hoping for? Adrian looked at her, really looked, saw the tension in her shoulders, the careful distance she maintained, the way her hands clenched at her sides like she was physically holding herself back from something. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I just wanted to know if any of what happened during the fever was real. If you actually cared, or if you were just too decent to let someone die. Does it matter? To me? Yes. She turned away, moving to the window. The morning light caught in her hair, turned it gold at the edges. For a long moment, she just stood there, silent. I stayed because leaving felt wrong, she finally said. Not because I forgave you. Not because I stopped being angry. Because somewhere between hatred and indifference, there's this space. And I'm stuck in it, trying to figure out what it means. And have you? Figured it out? No. She turned back to face him. But I know this. You don't get to ask me if I care. Not yet. Not when you're still the man who destroyed me in front of everyone I knew. 1 week of good behavior doesn't erase that. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're already falling back into old patterns, making demands, expecting answers, pushing boundaries to see what you can get away with. Her voice hardened. That's not change, Adrian. That's just performing change while staying exactly who you were. The words hit like a physical blow. Because she was right. He'd been testing her, pushing, trying to find the limits of her patience, her forgiveness, her willingness to stay. Old habits from a lifetime of manipulation and control. You're right, he said. I'm sorry. I'll do better. Don't apologize. Just actually do better. She left before he could respond, the door closing with a quiet finality that felt worse than shouting. Adrian lay back against the pillows and forced himself to face an uncomfortable truth. Knowing he needed to change and actually changing were entirely different challenges, and he had no idea how to bridge that gap. By the 10th day, he could walk from the bed to the chair without collapsing. Small victory, but it felt massive. By the 12th day, he made it to the study on the ground floor, where months of neglected correspondence had piled up like accusations. He was reading through a particularly tedious letter from his solicitor when Lydia appeared in the doorway. You're out of bed, she observed. I'm out of bed. How do you feel? Like I was trampled by horses and left for dead, but upright. Progress. The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. I suppose that counts. She didn't leave immediately this time. Instead, she drifted into the room, examining the books on his shelves with the careful attention of someone genuinely interested in what they revealed. You have good taste, she said. Philosophy, history, legal theory. Not what I expected from... She trailed off. From the Ice Duke, Adrian supplied. From the arrogant bastard who humiliated you? I was going to say from someone who performs disinterest so convincingly, but yes, those work too. He set down the letter. Everything about me was performance, Lydia. The boredom, the arrogance, the cruelty. I thought if I could convince everyone I didn't care about anything, they couldn't use caring against me. My father taught me that lesson early and well. That must have been exhausting. It was. He paused. It is. I don't know how to stop. She turned to look at him, and for the first time in days, her expression softened slightly. You start by being honest, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Like now? Like now? Adrian took a breath, committing to something that felt like stepping off that cliff into darkness. I'm terrified you're going to leave. That one morning I'll wake up and you'll be gone, and I'll be alone again. That's why I asked if you cared. Not because I deserve an answer, but because I'm scared of what happens when you decide I'm not worth the effort. Lydia was quiet for a long moment. That's honest, she finally said. Does it help? I don't know yet. She moved to the chair across from him, settling into it with the careful deliberation of someone making a decision. But I'll be honest too. I came here for answers, for closure, maybe for revenge disguised as mercy. Instead, I've spent 2 weeks watching you fight to become someone different, and I don't know what to do with that. What do you want to do with it? That's the problem. I don't know. She met his eyes. Part of me wants to leave. Go back to my father's estate. Forget this ever happened. Build a life that has nothing to do with you. That would be easier. But part of me is curious. You've spent your whole life performing. I've spent mine refusing to perform. What happens when those two people actually try to be real with each other? Does something genuine emerge, or do we just hurt each other in new and creative ways? I think we'll find out, Adrian said. If you stay long enough. That's what I'm afraid of. Before he could respond, Mrs. Davies burst into the room, face pale. Your Grace, Miss Hawthorne, there are riders approaching, 3 of them. One carries the Pemberton crest. Adrian felt his stomach drop. Did you say Pemberton? Yes, Your Grace. Lord Pemberton himself, from the looks of it, and he's brought companions. Lydia stood abruptly. Why would Lord Pemberton come here? Adrian knew exactly why, and the knowledge made him want to crawl back into bed and let the fever take him after all. Because someone told him I was dying or dead, and he's come to see what he can scavenge from the remains. I don't understand. Lord Pemberton is my cousin, distant cousin, but close enough to inherit if I die without an heir. Adrian pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the way his legs protested. He's been waiting for this moment since my father died, probably celebrated when he heard about the fever. And the companions? Witnesses, probably a physician to confirm I'm unfit to manage my own affairs, maybe a solicitor to start transfer of assets. He moved toward the door, each step requiring conscious effort. This is an ambush, Lydia, and I'm in no condition to fight it. Then don't fight alone. He looked at her surprised. You'd help me? After everything? I'd help anyone being circled by vultures. Don't make it more than it is. But something in her eyes suggested it might be more than that, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. They made it to the entrance hall just as the riders dismounted. Lord Pemberton was exactly as Adrian remembered, soft around the middle, hard around the eyes, with the kind of smile that made you check your pockets afterward. The 2 men with him looked official and grim. Cousin! Pemberton's voice boomed through the hall. I came as soon as I heard. How dreadful this illness. We were so worried. Were you? Adrian's voice was flat. How kind. But look at you, up and about. The reports of your condition must have been exaggerated. Pemberton's eyes flickered to Lydia, assessment sharp and quick. And you have company. How unexpected. Miss Hawthorne has been assisting with my recovery. Has she? The implication in those 2 words was ugly. How very generous of her. Though I must say, cousin, it's quite irregular to have an unmarried woman in residence, particularly one with, shall we say, a complicated reputation. Lydia's spine went rigid. Adrian felt rage flood through him, hot and clarifying and completely uncontrollable. Careful, he said, voice dropping to something dangerous. You're speaking about the woman who saved my life. Mind your tongue or I'll forget we're related. Pemberton held up his hands in mock surrender. No offense intended, I'm sure, but you must admit the situation appears unusual, which is why I've brought Dr. Thornhill and Mr. Edwards, my solicitor, to ensure everything is proper. By which you mean to declare me unfit and seize control of the estate. Now, cousin, such harsh words. Cut the performance, Pemberton. We both know why you're here. Adrian took a step forward, felt his legs wobble, and forced them steady through sheer will. You thought I was dying. You came to pick over the corpse. Unfortunately for you, I survived. So unless you have actual business to discuss, you can get back on your horses and leave. The solicitor stepped forward. Your Grace, if I may, there are questions about your capacity to manage your affairs. The fever may have caused damage. It would be prudent to conduct an evaluation. I decline to be evaluated. With respect, Your Grace, you may not be in a position to make that decision. He's perfectly capable. Lydia's voice cut through the room like steel. I've spent 2 weeks watching him recover. His mind is sharp, his judgment sound. Whatever evaluation you're planning is unnecessary. Dr. Thornhill peered at her through spectacles. And you're qualified to make that assessment based on what medical training? Exactly. Based on the fact that your patient was calling for me while 3 other physicians failed to break his fever. Based on the fact that I sat vigil while he fought for his life. Based on the fact that I actually care whether he lives or dies, which is more than can be said for any of you. The silence that followed was absolute. Pemberton's face had gone red. Miss Hawthorne, I don't know what your arrangement with my cousin is, but you have no legal standing here. This is family business. Then treat it like family, she shot back. Instead of circling like you're waiting for him to fall so you can claim what isn't yours. How dare you? How dare I what? Speak the truth? Point out that you showed up with a physician and solicitor before you even confirmed your cousin was still alive? Lydia moved to stand beside Adrian, and he felt absurdly grateful for her presence. That's not concern. That's opportunism. And it's disgusting. Pemberton turned to Adrian. You're going to let her speak to me this way? Your own family? She's not saying anything I wasn't thinking, Adrian replied. And frankly, she's being more polite about it than I would be. This is outrageous. This is my estate, my home, and you're no longer welcome in it. Adrian straightened, ignoring the way his body screamed in protest. Leave, now, before I have you forcibly removed. You can't. I can. I am. Guards. Two men appeared from the shadows near the door, estate workers probably, but they looked capable enough. Pemberton's expression went from outraged to calculating. Fine. We'll leave. But this isn't over, cousin. Questions will be raised about your fitness to manage these lands, about your judgment, about the propriety of your current living arrangements. His eyes flicked to Lydia again. Society will have opinions. Society always has opinions, Adrian said. I've stopped caring what they are. It wasn't entirely true, but it felt true when he said it, and that was something. Pemberton and his companions left in a flurry of threats and promises to return with proper legal authority. The door closed behind them with a satisfying finality. Adrian immediately collapsed into the nearest chair. That was stupid, he gasped. Standing that long. Stupid. That was brave, Lydia corrected. She knelt beside him, checking his pulse with practiced efficiency. Your heart's racing. You need to rest. In a minute. He caught her hand before she could pull away. Thank you for what you said. You didn't have to defend me. I wasn't defending you. I was attacking them. There's a difference. Is there? She looked at him for a long moment. Maybe not. Maybe I'm starting to confuse the two. Lydia, don't. Don't make this into something it's not. I helped because it was right, not because I've forgiven you or forgotten what you did. But she didn't pull her hand away. Though I will say this, watching you stand up to Pemberton while barely able to stand at all was probably the first genuinely impressive thing I've seen you do. Impressive enough to consider staying. Don't push your luck. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Not forgiveness, not even friendship, but possibility. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. Pemberton's visit had shaken something loose. Fear, maybe, or the belated realization that surviving the fever didn't mean he'd survived everything it had cost him. He was weak, vulnerable, and the vultures were circling. He needed to get stronger, faster, needed to prove he could manage his estate, his affairs, his life without requiring Lydia to fight his battles. But more than that, he needed to figure out what he actually wanted his life to become. Because the old version, cold, controlled, cruel, had nearly killed him. And the new version was still too undefined to offer any real direction. He was standing at the window, watching the moon rise over the moors, when he heard the knock. Come in. Lydia entered, wrapped in a dressing gown, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger this way, more vulnerable. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Too much thinking. About? Everything. Pemberton, the estate. What happens next? He paused. You. Me? You can't stay here forever, Lydia. Eventually you'll have to go home. And when you do, Pemberton was right. Society will have opinions about this, about us, about what it means that we were here together, alone, for weeks. I know. Does that scare you? Terrify me, she admitted. My reputation was already damaged. This will destroy what's left. By the time I return to London, I'll be unmarriageable, socially ruined. Everything my father worked for, gone. Then why did you stay? She moved to stand beside him at the window. Because some things matter more than reputation, like standing up to bullies, like refusing to let someone die alone, like... She stopped. Like what? Like believing people can actually change, even when it's hard, even when it costs something. Adrian turned to face her. I am changing. I swear to you. I'm trying. I know, I can see it, but Adrian, trying isn't the same as succeeding. And I can't stake my entire future on the hope that you'll become someone different. Her voice cracked slightly. I want to believe you, Part of me already does, but the rest of me remembers what it felt like to be destroyed by you. And it's screaming that I'm being a fool. You're not a fool, aren't I? I came here to watch you die. Instead, I saved your life. I defended you to your enemies. I'm standing here in the middle of the night having a conversation that feels dangerously close to something I'm not ready for. She laughed, but it sounded broken. If that's not foolish, I don't know what is. Adrian reached for her hand, half expecting her to pull away. She didn't. I can't promise I won't fail, he said quietly. Can't promise I'll be perfect or even adequate. But I can promise this. I will spend every day trying to be someone worthy of the second chance you gave me. And if that's not enough, I'll accept it. But please, Lydia, don't leave yet. Give me time to prove this is real. She was crying now, silent tears that caught the moonlight. You're asking for a lot. I know. More than you have any right to ask. I know that too. And if I give you that time and you fail, if you hurt me again, then you'll have been right not to trust me, and I'll have proven I was never worth saving in the first place. Lydia pulled her hand free, wiped her eyes roughly. That's not an answer. That's just more self-pity dressed up as accountability. Then what do you want me to say? I want you to tell me what happens if you succeed, if you actually become this person you're trying to be. What then? We just go back to our separate lives and pretend none of this happened? Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. Her voice rose, frustration finally breaking through. I came here angry and righteous and certain. Now I'm confused and scared and completely lost. You've taken everything I thought I knew about justice and forgiveness and turned it inside out. So no, I don't know what I want, except maybe for you to figure out what you want so at least one of us has clarity. Adrian looked at her, really looked, saw the woman who'd saved his life, who'd defended him to enemies, who stood in his study at midnight crying and furious and more real than anyone he'd ever known. And he knew, with sudden and terrifying certainty, exactly what he wanted. I want you to stay, he said. Not as my nurse or my defender or some temporary arrangement we'll both regret. I want you to stay because you want to. Because this, whatever this is between us, feels like the first real thing I've experienced in my entire life. And I'm not ready to let that go. Lydia stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. That's insane, she whispered. Probably. We barely know each other. We've spent most of our acquaintance hating each other. I know. And you're asking me to throw away my entire life, my reputation, my future, everything, on the possibility that you might become someone different? When you put it that way, it sounds terrible. It is terrible. It's the worst idea I've ever heard. She was pacing now, agitated and beautiful and completely undone. You don't get to... She stopped mid-sentence, turned to face him. Do you mean it? She asked. Really mean it, not fever-talking or performing or trying to manipulate me into staying longer. I mean it, Adrian said. I know I have no right to ask. No, I haven't earned even a fraction of your trust. But yes, Lydia, I mean it. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Then Lydia crossed the room in 3 quick strides and kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic or soft or any of the things a first kiss was supposed to be. It was desperate and angry and tasted like tears and fury and something that might have been hope if they were both brave enough to name it. When she pulled back, they were both breathing hard. That was stupid, she said, completely. We're going to regret this. Probably. I should leave. Right now. Before this gets worse. You should. But neither of them moved. I hate you, Lydia said, but her hands were still fisted in his shirt. I know. I hate that you make me want to stay when I should run. Hate that you're making me choose between safety and whatever terrifying thing this is. Hate that I'm even considering it. Are you? Considering it? She looked up at him, eyes fierce and frightened. I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. When I've had time to remember all the reasons this is insane. And if you still think it's insane tomorrow, then I'll leave, and you'll let me go. Promise me, Adrian. Whatever happens, you'll let me make this choice freely. I promise. She stepped back, putting distance between them that felt both necessary and painful. I'm going to bed, alone. And tomorrow we're going to pretend this conversation never happened until I figure out what the hell I actually want. All right. She made it to the door before turning back. For what it's worth, that thing you said about this being real, I felt that too, and it scares me more than anything you did in that ballroom. Then she was gone, leaving Adrian alone with racing heart and the slowly dawning realization that surviving the fever might have been the easy part after all. Because fighting to live was simple compared to fighting for a future worth living. And for the first time in his life, he wanted something badly enough to fight for it properly, even if it destroyed him in the process. The scream woke the entire house. Adrian was already running before he was fully conscious, his weakened body protesting every step as he raced down the hallway toward Lydia's room. He burst through the door to find her pressed against the far wall, face white, staring at something on her pillow. A dead bird, throat cut, blood soaking into white linens, and beside it, a note in handwriting he didn't recognize. Some women forget their place. This is what happens when they do. Leave Blackmore Hall or learn the lesson permanently. Mrs. Davies appeared behind him, gasped, and immediately began ushering other servants away from the doorway. Adrian moved to Lydia, careful not to touch her without permission. Are you hurt? She shook her head, but her hands were shaking. I woke up and it was just there, on my pillow, like someone wanted me to know they'd been standing over me while I slept. Pemberton, Adrian said, voice cold with fury. It has to be. He must have left someone behind when they rode out, someone to terrorize you into leaving. It worked. Lydia's voice was flat. I'm leaving. First light. I won't stay somewhere I'm not safe. No. She looked at him like he was insane. Did you see what's on my bed, Adrian? Someone threatened my life. I'm not staying here to see if they mean it. Then we'll make you safe. Guards on your door, new locks. I'll sleep in the hallway if I have to. He caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. But I'm not letting you run because my bastard cousin is trying to intimidate you out of the way. That's exactly what he wants. I don't care what he wants. I care about not dying in my sleep. You won't. I swear to you, Lydia. I will keep you safe. You can barely stand for more than an hour without collapsing. How are you going to keep anyone safe? The words hit like a slap, mostly because they were true. Then I'll get stronger, Adrian said. Faster, whatever it takes. That's not... A crash from downstairs cut her off. They looked at each other, fear mirrored in both their faces. Stay here, Adrian ordered. Like hell. She grabbed the fireplace poker. If someone's attacking your house, I'm not hiding in my room. They moved together down the stairs, Mrs. Davies following with a candelabra held like a weapon. The entrance hall was chaos. Two men, estate workers Adrian recognized, were struggling with a third figure dressed in black, face covered. The intruder fought like a cornered animal, all desperate strength and no technique. Hold him! Adrian shouted. But the man twisted free, sprinted for the door, and ran straight into Lydia's poker, which she'd extended at exactly the right height to catch him in the stomach. He went down hard. Adrian was on him in seconds, despite his weakness, ripping away the mask. A young man, maybe 20, with Pemberton's eyes and the desperate look of someone who'd been paid to do something terrible and was only now realizing the consequences. Who are you? Adrian demanded. Nobody. I'm nobody. You're in my house threatening people I care about. Try again. The young man's eyes flickered to Lydia. Lord Pemberton said she was ruining everything, said she had to go. Said if I scared her off, he'd pay me enough to... To what? Kill her? No. Just scare her. The bird was supposed to... I wasn't going to actually hurt anyone, I swear. Adrian hauled him upright with strength he didn't know he still had. You broke into my home, threatened a woman under my protection, left a death threat on her pillow while she slept. His voice dropped to something lethal. Give me one reason I shouldn't throw you to the magistrate right now. Please, my family needs the money. Lord Pemberton promised... Lord Pemberton is a liar who uses desperate people to do his dirty work. Adrian shoved him toward the estate workers. Lock him in the cellar. We'll deal with the magistrate in the morning, and someone ride for Pemberton. Now. I want him here at dawn to answer for this. The young man was dragged away, still protesting his innocence. Lydia stood in the hallway, poker still in hand, looking like she might be sick. Are you all right? Adrian asked. No, not even slightly. She set down the poker with shaking hands. Someone just tried to... They wanted me... I know. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated Pemberton would do something this vicious. This isn't your fault, isn't it? He's my family, my problem. You're caught in the middle because you stayed to help me. Adrian moved closer, careful not to crowd her. Lydia, I meant what I said. I'll keep you safe, whatever it takes. By doing what? Fighting off every person Pemberton sends? You can barely manage stairs. Then I'll learn to manage them while defending you. I'll get stronger. I'll... Stop. She held up a hand. Just stop. You can't promise things you can't control. Nobody can. Then what do you want me to do? She looked at him, really looked, like she was seeing him for the first time. I want you to be honest, she said finally, about what this is, about why you really want me to stay. Because if it's guilt or obligation or some misguided sense of honor, I need to know now before this gets any messier. Adrian took a breath, knowing this was the moment, the choice that would define everything that came after. He could lie, could dress up his motives in noble language and self-sacrifice, or he could tell her the truth and accept whatever consequences came with it. It started as guilt, he admitted. When I was dying, calling for you, that was me trying to make amends before it was too late. But that's not why I want you to stay now. Then why? Because you see me. The real me, not the performance. And instead of running, you stayed and fought to save someone who didn't deserve saving. That's extraordinary, Lydia. You're extraordinary. And yes, I'm terrified and confused and completely out of my depth. But I know this. Walking away from you now would be the biggest mistake of my life. Bigger than the ballroom. Bigger than any of it. Lydia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. That's not fair. You can't just say things like that when I'm trying to make rational decisions. I'm done being fair. Fair would be letting you leave, protecting yourself from my mess. But I'm selfish enough to ask you to stay anyway. Why? Because I'm falling in love with you, Adrian said, and I know that's insane. No, we barely know each other outside of crisis and fever and whatever this is. But it's true. And I'd rather say it now and lose you than stay silent and wonder what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to tell you the truth. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Lydia stepped forward and slapped him across the face. Not hard, but firm enough to make her point. That, she said, is for saying something that important in the middle of a crisis when I can't think straight. I'm sorry. And this... She grabbed his shirt and kissed him again, fierce and desperate and full of everything she couldn't say out loud. Is for saying it anyway, you complete idiot. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I'm not saying it back, Lydia said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know what I feel except confused and angry and so scared I can barely stand it. That's fair. But I'm not leaving, not because of Pemberton, not because of threats, not until I figure out what this is and whether it's real or just trauma bonding disguised as something deeper. I'll take it. You'll take whatever I'm willing to give and be grateful for it, she corrected. Because Adrian, if you hurt me again, if any of this is performance or manipulation or you playing some long game I don't understand, I will destroy you so completely that Pemberton will look like mercy by comparison. Understood. Good. She stepped back, composing herself with visible effort. Now, we have until dawn before your cousin arrives. What's the plan? Adrian felt something shift in his chest, admiration mixing with affection, mixing with sheer terror at what he'd just committed to, but beneath it all, determination. We make him confess, Adrian said, to everything. The threats, the break-in, his plans to have me declared unfit. We get it on record with witnesses. Then we use it to bury him so deep he never threatens anyone again. And if he doesn't confess, then we make him wish he had. Lydia smiled, and it wasn't nice. Now you're talking my language. They spent the remaining hours before dawn preparing, gathering witnesses, securing statements, building a case that would stand up to any scrutiny. When Pemberton arrived at first light, flanked by his solicitor and looking smug, he found not a bereaved cousin ready to cave to pressure. He found Adrian Blackmore standing in his entrance hall, fully dressed, surrounded by staff and evidence, with Lydia Hawthorne at his side looking like an avenging angel. Cousin, Adrian said, we need to talk about your employee, the one currently locked in my cellar for attempted murder. Pemberton's face went white, and in that moment, Adrian knew. Whatever came next Whatever battles they'd have to fight, he wouldn't be fighting them alone. Pemberton recovered his composure faster than Adrian expected. Attempted murder? His laugh came out forced but practiced. Cousin, you're clearly still unwell. Perhaps the fever affected your judgment more than the physicians realized. Save it! Adrian gestured to the estate workers flanking the entrance. Bring him up! The young man from the cellar appeared, wrists bound, looking significantly worse for wear after a night contemplating his choices. When he saw Pemberton, something like hope flickered across his face. My lord, tell them, you said it was just meant to scare her. I have no idea what this person is talking about. Pemberton's voice went cold. I've never seen him before in my life. The young man's face crumbled. But you hired me yourself at the inn 3 days ago. A disturbed individual making wild accusations. How unfortunate. Pemberton turned to his solicitor. Make note of this, Edwards. My cousin appears to be holding an innocent stranger captive based on delusional claims. This will certainly support our petition regarding his mental fitness. Adrian felt Lydia tense beside him, but he kept his voice level. Thomas, tell us again what Lord Pemberton hired you to do. The young man, Thomas, looked between them desperately. He said the woman staying here was dangerous, that she was manipulating the Duke, trying to steal his fortune. He paid me £10 to break in and leave a warning, said if she left, there'd be 50 more. Lies fabricated under duress, Pemberton said smoothly. You've obviously coerced this poor soul. We have witnesses, Lydia cut in. Her voice was steady, but Adrian heard the fury beneath it. The innkeeper at the Crown and Heart remembers you meeting with Thomas. So does the barmaid who served your table. So do the 3 patrons who heard you discussing your problem at Blackmore Hall. Pemberton's smile flickered. Witnesses can be mistaken. Memories are unreliable. Perhaps. But the letter you sent to Dr. Thornhill 2 weeks ago isn't unreliable. Adrian pulled a folded paper from his jacket. The one where you wrote, and I quote, When my cousin succumbs to his illness, I trust you'll be available to testify regarding his deteriorated mental state in the weeks prior. Your cooperation will be generously rewarded. The solicitor's face went pale. Your Grace, how did you obtain private correspondence? Dr. Thornhill sent it to me yesterday. Seems he didn't appreciate being used as a pawn in your scheme, Pemberton. His conscience got the better of him. Adrian stepped closer. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Waiting for me to die, but preparing contingencies in case I survived. Planting seeds of doubt about my fitness. Positioning yourself as the concerned relative ready to step in. This is preposterous. Is it? Because we also have testimony from your stable master about the riders you sent here the day after you heard about my fever. Not to check on my welfare, to scout the estate, count the servants, assess the value of everything you plan to take. Pemberton's composure was cracking visibly now. You can't prove any of this. Actually, we can. Lydia moved forward, and Adrian saw what he'd fallen in love with. Not beauty or grace, but pure, focused intelligence weaponized into something magnificent. Because unlike you, we spent the night building an actual case instead of assuming intimidation would be enough. We have witnesses, documents, and a very talkative young man who's decided cooperation beats hanging for attempted murder. I told you it was just supposed to scare her. Doesn't matter, Adrian said. You broke into my home, threatened a guest, left a death threat. Under the law, that's sufficient for criminal charges regardless of your ultimate intent. The solicitor was edging toward the door. Pemberton grabbed his arm. Edwards, do something. I'm afraid I can't, my lord. If half of what they're saying is true, he pulled free. I'd recommend you secure alternative legal counsel. I have no interest in being party to conspiracy charges. He left without looking back. Pemberton stood alone, stripped of his support, looking smaller than Adrian had ever seen him. You can't do this, he said, but the words lacked conviction. I'm family. You can't just... I can. I am. Adrian felt a strange calm settle over him. You wanted me weak and vulnerable so you could swoop in and play savior. Instead, you found me with someone who actually cares whether I live or die. Someone willing to fight for me when I couldn't fight for myself. That must be quite the shock. She's ruined you, Pemberton spat. Made you soft. This never would have happened if you'd stayed the way you were, cold and alone and miserable? Adrian supplied. You're right. The old version of me would have handled this differently. Probably would have paid you off, swept it under the rug, maintained appearances at all costs. But I'm done with that version. Done protecting people who don't deserve protection. What do you want? I want you to confess, publicly, to the magistrate, with witnesses. Everything. The bribery, the conspiracy, the threats, all of it. And if I refuse? Then we go through the courts, drag every sordid detail into the light. Your reputation, your standing, your prospects, all of it destroyed. Adrian smiled without warmth. Your choice. Quick confession or slow destruction. I'm satisfied either way. Pemberton looked at Lydia. This is your doing. You've poisoned him against his own family. His family poisoned itself, she said. I just refuse to let you profit from it. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Pemberton's shoulders sagged. Fine, I'll confess, but I want immunity from prosecution. I cooperate. You drop the charges. No immunity, Adrian said, but I'll speak on your behalf at sentencing. Recommend leniency based on your cooperation. That's the best you're getting. That's the offer. Take it, or we proceed with criminal charges and let a jury decide your fate. Pemberton closed his eyes. When he opened them, something fundamental had shifted, the entitled arrogance replaced by defeat. Where do I sign? The magistrate arrived within the hour. Sir William Hartley was an old friend of Adrian's father, which meant he was predisposed to doubt anything Adrian said. But even Hartley's skepticism couldn't survive the weight of evidence they'd assembled. Pemberton's confession was thorough, bitter, and completely damning. I hired Thomas Wells to frighten Miss Hawthorne into leaving Blackmore Hall, he said, voice flat. I believed her presence was detrimental to my cousin's recovery and judgment. I may have overestimated the threat she represented. Overestimated the threat, Lydia repeated. I woke up with a dead bird on my pillow and a note threatening my life. That's not overestimation. That's attempted intimidation through violence. Miss Hawthorne raises a valid point, Hartley said, writing rapidly. Lord Pemberton, did you at any time intend actual physical harm to come to her? No, I swear it was only meant to scare her off. Because you wanted the Duke's estate for yourself, Hartley finished. These are serious charges, my lord. Conspiracy, attempted extortion, criminal trespass. I'll need to consult with the Crown prosecutor, but you're looking at substantial penalties. Pemberton's face had gone gray. I cooperated. The Duke said he'd speak for leniency, and I will, Adrian confirmed. But Sir William is right. The law still demands accountability. You committed crimes. You'll answer for them. This is your revenge, isn't it? For all the years Pemberton stopped himself. For all the years you what? Lydia asked quietly. Nothing. It doesn't matter. But Adrian knew what he'd almost said. For all the years I mocked you for being your father's disappointment. For all the times I reminded you that you'd never measure up. For being the living reminder of everything you hated about yourself. This isn't revenge, Adrian said. This is consequences. There's a difference. Hartley finished his notes and stood. I'll have the formal charges drawn up by tomorrow. Lord Pemberton, you're to remain on your estate and make no attempt to leave the county until this matter is resolved. Thomas Wells will be remanded to proper custody pending trial. And your grace? He looked at Adrian with something that might have been respect. I'm glad to see you're recovering. Your father would be surprised by how you've handled this. My father would be appalled, Adrian corrected. He'd have buried it quietly and maintained family unity at all costs. But my father's dead, and I'm tired of living by his rules. After Hartley left with Pemberton in tow, the house fell into strange quiet. Adrian stood in the entrance hall, feeling the adrenaline drain away and leave exhaustion in its wake. His legs were shaking, his head pounded, but underneath it all, something else. Satisfaction. Maybe even pride. You should rest, Lydia said. You've been standing for 3 hours. That's probably not wise. Probably not, but he didn't move. Thank you for everything. The witnesses, the case building, standing beside me while I confronted him. You did most of it yourself. Not true. I would have handled it the old way. Threats, intimidation, maybe violence if pushed. You showed me there was a better approach. He looked at her. You make me better, Lydia. even when I don't deserve it. She was quiet for a moment. You know what scares me most about this? What? How natural it felt, fighting beside you, building a case together, being partners in something that mattered. She moved to the window, looking out over the moors. I came here expecting to hate you. Instead, I'm standing in your entrance hall feeling proud of what we accomplished together. That's not supposed to happen. Why not? Because you destroyed me, Adrian. 3 months ago, you humiliated me in front of everyone I knew, and now I'm... She trailed off. Now you're what? I don't know, that's the problem. I don't know what I am anymore, what we are. Whether this is real or just crisis bonding that'll fall apart the moment things get normal again. Adrian crossed to her, moving slowly. Then let's find out. How? Stay. Not because of Pemberton or threats or medical need. Stay because you want to see where this goes. Give us a chance to figure out if this works outside of crisis. And what happens if it doesn't work? If we discover we're only good at fighting common enemies and terrible at actual partnership? Then we'll know. And we'll part ways with clarity instead of always wondering what might have been. Lydia turned to face him. You're asking me to risk everything on a maybe. I know. My reputation's already damaged. Staying longer will destroy it completely. No decent family will receive me. I'll be unmarriageable. Unless you marry me. The words hung in the air between them, shocking in their directness. Lydia stared at him. Did you just... Are you proposing? No. Maybe. I don't know. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his own inability to articulate what he meant. I'm saying if you stay, if we try this, I'm not treating it casually. I'm not offering you the position of secret mistress or temporary companion. If we do this, we do it properly. Engagement, marriage, full partnership. Or nothing at all. That's insane. We barely know each other outside of crisis. I know that too. And you're still suggesting it. Because the thought of you leaving feels worse than any risk involved in asking you to stay. He caught her hands. Lydia, I can't promise perfection. Can't promise I won't fail or fall back into old patterns. But I can promise I'll keep trying to be better. Keep choosing honesty over performance. Keep fighting to deserve you. You don't have to deserve me. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? She pulled her hands free, pacing. I don't know. Nobody's ever... She stopped, frustrated. You're supposed to court me properly. We're supposed to have time to figure out if we're compatible. There are rules, Adrian, social expectations, ways these things are done. And following those rules has worked out so well for both of us, he said dryly. Despite everything, she laughed. Fair point. So what do you say? Stay. Try. See what happens when we stop fighting external battles and start figuring out if we can actually build something together. Lydia looked at him for a long moment. If I say yes, and I'm not saying I am, what would that even look like? You're a duke. I'm a magistrate's daughter with a ruined reputation. Society will never accept it. Then society can burn, Adrian said. I've spent my entire life performing for their approval. Look where it got me, dying alone, calling for the one person I'd hurt most. I'm done performing. If they can't accept you, they can't accept me. That's easy to say now. Wait until you're actually facing social exile. I faced death, Lydia. Social exile is nothing compared to that. She moved to the chair, sinking into it like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. You're asking for a decision I'm not ready to make. I know, so don't make it yet. Just don't leave. Give me a week. Let me show you what life could look like here, what we could build together. Then decide. A week. 1 week. If you still want to leave after that, I'll provide a carriage, a chaperone, and a story that protects your reputation as much as possible. No arguments, no guilt, just acceptance. And if I decide to stay, then we figure out the rest together. Lydia closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had shifted. 1 week. But Adrian, I need you to understand, I'm not agreeing to anything beyond that. I'm not promising to fall in love with you or marry you or any of it. I'm just not leaving yet. I'll take it. You better make it count then. He would. The next 3 days passed in strange domesticity. Adrian was stronger now, able to walk the grounds, handle correspondence, even ride for short distances. Lydia stayed close, partly from caution and partly from something neither was ready to name. They fell into routines. Breakfast together in the morning room, discussing estate business like they'd been partners for years. Afternoons in the study, where Lydia helped organize months of neglected paperwork while Adrian handled tenants' concerns. Evenings on the terrace, watching the sun set over the moors. It felt normal, comfortable, like something that could actually last. On the fourth day, Caroline arrived. Lydia heard the commotion from the study and knew immediately who it was. Nobody else would demand entrance that forcefully. She found her friend in the entrance hall, travel-worn and furious. "Have you lost your mind?" Caroline didn't bother with greetings. 2 weeks, Lydia. You've been here 2 weeks with the man who destroyed you, and you send me one letter saying, "Situation complicated, we'll explain later." Caroline, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you've thrown away every shred of reputation you had left to play nurse to a man who doesn't deserve your compassion, let alone your time. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because the rumors in London are vicious. They're saying you're his mistress, that he's paying you off, that you've gone mad from the humiliation and this is some elaborate revenge plot. Caroline's eyes were bright with tears. I defended you to everyone, told them you were better than this. Was I wrong? The accusation stung worse because Lydia couldn't entirely deny it. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe you were. Maybe I have gone mad. But Caroline, things are different than you think. Then enlighten me. Before Lydia could respond, Adrian appeared in the doorway. Miss Caroline, welcome to Blackmore Hall. I apologize for the circumstances of— Don't! Caroline's voice could have frozen fire. Don't you dare speak to me like we're social equals making polite conversation. You destroyed my best friend, and now she's defending you. I want to know why. Adrian looked at Lydia. Do you want me to leave? No, stay. She deserves to hear this from both of us. They moved to the drawing room. Caroline sat rigid and angry. Lydia settled beside her, while Adrian remained standing. Whether from courtesy or inability to sit still, she wasn't sure. Tell me everything, Caroline said. From the beginning. And it better be good, because right now I'm considering ways to make your life as miserable as you made hers. So they told her. Not everything. Some things were too private, too raw. But enough. The fever, the confession, the death threat, Pemberton's plot, the way they'd fought together, built something unexpected from the ruins of what should have been simple revenge. Caroline listened in silence, expression unreadable. When they finished, she sat back. So you're telling me you went from hating him to— what, exactly? I don't know, Lydia said honestly. That's what we're trying to figure out. And you believe his transformation is real? That he's not just performing again? I believe he's trying. Whether it lasts— She trailed off. Caroline turned to Adrian. Do you love her? Yes, he said without hesitation. Even though loving her means losing everything your title represents? The social standing, the connections, the advantageous marriage. I never had those things anyway. Not really. They were just another performance. He met Caroline's eyes. I love her because she's the first person who saw through the performance and stayed anyway. Because she's brave and brilliant and makes me want to be someone better than I am. And because when I was dying, her voice was the only thing that could bring me back. Pretty words, Caroline said. But words are cheap. What are you willing to do to prove it? Whatever it takes. Even if it means standing against society, against your own class, against everyone who thinks she's beneath you? Especially then. Caroline studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Lydia. Do you believe him? I want to, Lydia said quietly. But I'm scared, Caroline. Scared of trusting him and being wrong. Scared of walking away and always wondering if I gave up too soon. Scared that maybe I'm just lonely and broken and confusing gratitude for something deeper. Those are valid fears. I know, but they don't tell me what to do. Caroline reached for her hand. Then I'll tell you what I see. I see two people who've hurt each other badly trying to build something real from the wreckage. I see genuine effort instead of performance. And I see you happier than you've been in months, even though you're terrified to admit it. Lydia's throat tightened. That doesn't mean it's right. No, but it means it's worth exploring. Caroline squeezed her hand. I came here ready to drag you home by force if necessary. But now, I think you should stay. Not because he deserves it, he probably doesn't, but because you deserve to find out if this is real. And if it's not, then I'll help you pick up the pieces, like always. She looked at Adrian. But understand this, Your Grace. If you hurt her again, if any of this is manipulation or performance or temporary transformation that disappears when it's inconvenient, I will make sure everyone in London knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Clear? Clear, Adrian said. And for what it's worth, I'm glad Lydia has someone willing to fight for her the way you do. Someone had to, since you were too busy destroying her to defend her. The words hung heavy in the air. You're right, Adrian said quietly. Everything you said is right. I don't deserve her forgiveness, don't deserve her time or her patience or any chance at redemption. But I'm going to keep trying to earn it anyway. Because the alternative, going back to who I was, would be worse than any punishment you could devise. Caroline stood. I'm staying, at least for a few days. I want to see this transformation for myself before I decide whether to believe it's real. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, Adrian said. After he left to arrange accommodations, Caroline turned to Lydia. Are you sure about this? No, but I'm sure I'm not ready to give up yet. Then I'll stay, watch, judge, and if necessary, help you escape when this all falls apart. You think it will? I think people don't change that quickly. But I also think sometimes crisis breaks people open enough that change becomes possible. She pulled Lydia into a hug. Just promise me you'll be careful. With your heart, with your future, with everything. I promise. But as Lydia said it, she wondered if it was a promise she could actually keep. The turning point came on the 6th day. A letter arrived from London, formal, official, bearing the seal of Lady Ashford, hostess of the ball where Adrian had destroyed Lydia's reputation. Adrian opened it at breakfast, read silently, then set it down with a strange expression. What is it? Lydia asked. An invitation. To Lady Ashford's autumn ball. 3 weeks from now. He slid the letter across the table. We're both invited, explicitly, together. Lydia scanned the elegant script. I don't understand. Why would she, after everything that happened? Because news travels, Caroline said from the doorway. She'd taken to appearing at odd moments, observing. Pemberton's confession made it to London. People are talking, reassessing what they thought they knew about both of you. They think we're a couple, Lydia said slowly. Don't they? Worse. They think you're a scandal wrapped in a love story. The woman he wronged saving his life. The Duke transformed by near-death experience. Society loves nothing more than redemption narratives, especially ones this dramatic. Caroline poured herself tea. Lady Ashford is smart. If she's the first to embrace your reconciliation publicly, she positions herself at the center of the season's biggest story. Adrian was quiet, studying the invitation like it was a legal document requiring careful analysis. We don't have to go, he finally said. If you're not ready, if this feels like too much, what happens if we refuse? Lydia asked. Society assumes we're hiding, that whatever's between us won't survive public scrutiny. The gossip gets worse instead of better. And if we go? We make a statement that we're not ashamed, not hiding, that whatever this is, it's real enough to face the same people who witnessed your humiliation. Lydia felt Caroline's eyes on her, watching, judging. I need to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. But later, alone in the garden, Lydia couldn't stop thinking about the invitation. Going back to London meant facing everyone who'd laughed at her humiliation, meant walking into the same ballroom where Adrian had declared her beneath his notice, meant risking everything on the possibility that this fragile thing between them could survive outside the protective isolation of Blackmore Hall. It was terrifying. It was also, she realized, exactly the test she needed, because if their connection couldn't survive society's judgment, it wasn't real enough to build a life on. And if it could, if they could stand together in front of everyone who'd witnessed her destruction and show them something different, then maybe, just maybe, this was worth the risk after all. She found Adrian in the study reviewing estate accounts. "I'll go," she said without preamble. "To the ball. With you. Publicly." He looked up, surprised. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm not going to figure this out by hiding. If we're going to try this, really try, we need to know if it works in the real world, not just here where it's safe. It won't be easy. People will talk, judge, some will be cruel. Let them. I've survived worse than gossip." She moved to the desk, placing her hands flat on its surface. "But Adrian, understand this? If we do this, we do it honestly. No performances, no pretending. If society can't accept us as we actually are, then we don't belong there anyway." "Agreed. And if you have any doubts, any at all, about whether you can stand beside me when people judge, when they whisper, when they make it clear they think I'm beneath you, tell me now, before I invest any more of myself in this." Adrian stood, moving around the desk to face her directly. "I have many doubts about myself, about whether I can actually change, about whether I deserve any of this. But I have zero doubts about standing beside you. Whatever comes, we face it together, or not at all." Lydia searched his face for any sign of performance, of the old Adrian who would say anything to get what he wanted. She found only honesty. "Then we go," she said, "and we show them exactly what we're made of." 3 weeks suddenly felt like no time at all. The carriage ride to London took 2 days, and Lydia spent most of it fighting the urge to tell the driver to turn around. Caroline sat across from her, pretending to read, but clearly watching every nervous gesture, every moment Lydia's hands twisted in her lap. "You can still change your mind," Caroline said on the second afternoon, as the city's outskirts came into view. "No one would blame you." "I would blame me." Lydia forced her hand still. "I didn't come this far to run away at the last minute. Bravery and stupidity often look the same from the outside. Then I'll be stupidly brave." Adrian rode alongside the carriage on horseback, partly for propriety, partly because 3 people in close quarters for 2 days would have driven them all mad. But Lydia caught him glancing through the window periodically, checking on her like she might vanish if he looked away too long. It should have been annoying. Instead, it was oddly comforting. They reached London at dusk. The city felt different than when Lydia had left, louder, more aggressive, like it could smell weakness and was already circling. Her father's townhouse was exactly as she'd left it. The servants greeted her warmly, though their eyes flickered with curiosity when they saw Adrian dismounting behind her. "Miss Hawthorne," Morrison the butler said carefully, "your father is in his study. He's eager to speak with you." That couldn't be good. She found him exactly where Morrison indicated, surrounded by case files and looking older than she remembered. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. "Lydia, thank heaven." He stood, crossed to her, pulled her into a hug that squeezed the air from her lungs. 2 weeks. You were gone 2 weeks with barely a word. I was preparing to ride to Yorkshire myself. I'm sorry, I should have written more. Everything happened so fast. I heard. Eek. He released her, studying her face. The Duke of Blackmore's miraculous recovery. Lord Pemberton's confession. Your role in both. His eyes were sharp. The question is, what I'm hearing true, or is there more to the story? There's always more to the story. Then tell me, all of it, and I'll decide whether to thank the Duke for surviving or challenge him to a duel for compromising my daughter. Over the next hour, Lydia laid it all out. Her father listened without interrupting, his expression growing progressively more complex, concern mixing with pride, mixing with something that might have been resignation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You love him, he finally said. Not a question. I don't know, maybe. It's complicated. Love usually is. He moved to the window, looking out over the street. Your mother was a magistrate's clerk when I met her. Everyone said I was marrying beneath my station, that it would ruin my prospects. I nearly listened to them. Lydia had heard the story before, but never quite like this. What changed your mind? She did. She told me I could spend my life trying to impress people who'd never respect me anyway, or I could choose happiness and let their opinions burn. Turned out she was right on both counts. He turned back to face her. But Lydia, understand, choosing her cost me. Professional opportunities, social connections, friendships I thought were solid. It was worth it, But it wasn't easy. Are you saying I shouldn't go to the ball? I'm saying you should go with clear eyes. Whatever happens tomorrow night will define how society sees you for years, possibly forever. If Blackmore stands beside you, proves his transformation is real, you might find acceptance. But if he falters, if he falls back into old patterns when the pressure's on, you'll be the one left paying the price. I know. Do you trust him? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I'm trying to, Lydia said honestly. But I won't know if I can until I see him tested. Then tomorrow will tell you everything you need to know. That night, Lydia barely slept. She kept imagining the ballroom, the moment they'd walk in together, the silence that would fall, the whispers that would start. Would Adrian hold steady? Or would the pressure crack him, reveal the old Duke hiding beneath his transformation? She wouldn't know until it happened. Morning arrived too quickly. Caroline appeared at breakfast with determined efficiency. All right, we have 8 hours until the ball. That's enough time to make you look so stunning that society forgets to judge you for at least 5 minutes. Only 5 minutes? I'm being optimistic. Adrian sent a note around noon, picking you up at 7. Don't run away before then. Lydia sent back, not making any promises. But she didn't run. The dress Caroline had ordered was beautiful. Deep blue silk that brought out Lydia's eyes, cut in a style that was elegant without trying too hard to impress. No excessive jewels, no desperate attempt to look like something she wasn't. You look like yourself, Caroline said, adjusting the final pin in Lydia's hair. That's more powerful than trying to be anyone else. What if myself isn't enough? Then they're idiots and we leave early. At precisely 7 o'clock, Adrian's carriage arrived. Lydia's father walked her to the door, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Be brave, be honest, and if anyone gives you trouble, remember you're my daughter. You were raised to fight injustice wherever you find it. Even in ballrooms? Especially in ballrooms. That's where most of it lives. Adrian was waiting at the carriage, and Lydia's breath caught despite herself. He'd always been handsome in that cold, untouchable way. But tonight, something was different. The ice had melted, replaced by something warmer. He looked nervous, human, real. You're beautiful, he said simply. You clean up well yourself. I'm terrified. The admission surprised her. You are? Completely. I'm about to walk into a room full of people I've spent my entire life performing for and tell them I've changed, that the man they thought they knew never really existed. That's... He trailed off. Terrifying, Lydia supplied. Yes. He offered his hand, but I'm doing it anyway, because you're worth being terrified for. She took his hand, let him help her into the carriage. Caroline climbed in behind them. If either of you vomits from nerves, aim for the floor, not the dress. Despite everything, Lydia laughed. The Ashford ballroom was exactly as she remembered. Glittering chandeliers, elegant crowds, the same suffocating atmosphere of judgment dressed up as sophistication. Lydia felt her chest tighten as their carriage joined the queue of arrivals. We can still leave, Adrian said quietly. Just say the word. No, we're doing this. Lydia, we're doing this, she repeated. Together. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. The noise from the ballroom washed over them like a wave. Adrian stepped out first, then turned to offer his hand. Lydia took a breath, sent up a silent prayer to whatever forces governed stupid decisions, and stepped out into the light. The crowd parted as they walked toward the entrance. Lydia felt every eye turned toward them, heard the whispers starting like wind through grass. Is that the Duke of Blackmore? And Miss Hawthorne, after everything that happened, absolutely shameless. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezed once. Keep going. They reached the top of the stairs. Lady Ashford stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced charm. When she saw them, her smile widened genuinely. Your Grace, Miss Hawthorne, how absolutely delightful. She actually sounded like she meant it. I'm so pleased you could attend. Thank you for the invitation, Lady Ashford, Adrian said. We're honored to be here. The honor is mine. After hearing about your remarkable recovery and Miss Hawthorne's extraordinary dedication, well, I simply couldn't not invite you both. Society needs more stories of redemption and courage. Her eyes sparkled. Do enjoy yourselves. I predict this evening will be quite memorable. They moved into the ballroom proper. The whispers grew louder. People weren't even pretending not to stare anymore. "Ignore them," Caroline murmured from behind. "Hold your heads up." Easier said than done. Lydia recognized faces from the night of her humiliation. Lord Hartley, who'd laughed loudest. Lady Pemberton, who'd called her poor thing with obvious satisfaction. Lord Pembroke, who'd tried to force a dance and sulked when rejected. They were all here, all watching, all waiting to see what would happen next. "Miss Hawthorne!" A familiar voice cut through the noise. Lydia turned to see an older woman approaching, Mrs. Whitmore, one of her father's colleagues' wives. Someone who'd always been kind. "Mrs. Whitmore, how lovely to see you. And you, dear, we've all been so worried. When we heard you'd gone to Yorkshire..." She glanced at Adrian, clearly fishing for information. "I went to help nurse the Duke through his illness," Lydia said clearly, "at his request." "How very charitable of you. After..." Mrs. Whitmore trailed off delicately. "After he publicly humiliated her?" Adrian said, voice carrying. "You can say it, Mrs. Whitmore. I did. I was cruel and wrong and spent weeks calling for her forgiveness while fever nearly killed me. Miss Hawthorne was gracious enough to come anyway. I owe her my life." The conversations around them died. Everyone was listening now. Mrs. Whitmore looked flustered. "Your Grace, I didn't mean to..." "You meant to be polite while dancing around uncomfortable truth. I appreciate it, but I'm done dancing around things." Adrian turned to face the room, and Lydia felt her heart begin to race. "In fact, since everyone's already staring and whispering, perhaps I should save you all the trouble of speculation." "Adrian," Lydia whispered, "what are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago." He released her hand, moved to the center of the ballroom. People scrambled to give him space. "My lords and ladies," he said, voice clear and carrying, "I owe many of you an apology, but I owe one person in particular a very public reckoning." The room held its breath. 3 months ago, I stood in this very ballroom and said terrible things about Miss Lydia Hawthorne. I declared her beneath my notice. Not handsome enough, not clever enough, not worthy of my attention. I did it deliberately, cruelly, in front of witnesses specifically to cause maximum damage to her reputation. Lydia's face burned. This was worse than the original humiliation. Everyone being forced to relive it, remember it, judge her all over again. She started to turn away. "Don't." Caroline's hand caught her arm. "Listen. I did it because I was a coward," Adrian continued, "because Miss Hawthorne looked at me and saw through every performance I'd spent my life perfecting. She saw the emptiness, the fear, the desperate need for approval masquerading as contempt. And instead of facing that truth, I destroyed her to maintain my comfortable lies." Someone in the crowd gasped. "But lies don't survive crisis. When fever brought me to the edge of death, all the performances fell away. What remained was truth. I was dying alone because I'd spent my entire life pushing away anyone who might actually matter. And the person I'd hurt worst, the person I least deserved forgiveness from, was the only name I could call." He turned to look at Lydia directly. "She came anyway. Not because she'd forgiven me, she hadn't and shouldn't have, but because she's braver and better than I ever imagined. She saved my life, defended me to enemies, stood beside me when she had every reason to walk away. And now I'm asking her to do something even harder." Adrian crossed the ballroom to stand directly in front of her. "Miss Hawthorne, Lydia, you asked me once to prove my feelings were real, to prove them in the light instead of hiding behind status or fear." He dropped to one knee, and the entire room seemed to lean forward. "So here's my proof, in front of everyone who witnessed me destroy you. I was wrong. About you, about myself, about what matters. You are brilliant, courageous, and extraordinary. You make me want to be someone better than I am. And if you'll have me, if you can find it in yourself to trust me despite everything I've done, I would be honored to spend the rest of my life earning your faith." He pulled a ring from his pocket. Simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. "Will you marry me?" The silence was absolute. Lydia stared at him, mind blank with shock. This wasn't what they'd planned. They'd agreed to attend together, show a united front, test whether their connection survived public scrutiny. He'd just proposed marriage in front of the entire London elite. "You're insane," she said. Her voice carried in the stillness. Completely, he agreed. But I'm also completely sincere. I love you, Lydia. Not because you saved my life, because you showed me what life could be if I had the courage to stop performing and start living. Say yes, please. She should refuse. This was too public, too dramatic, too much pressure. But looking at Adrian kneeling before her, vulnerable and honest and terrified, she saw the truth he was offering. Not perfection, not promises that everything would be easy. Just this. A man choosing to be real in front of everyone he'd spent his life trying to impress. Because she mattered more than their approval. That was worth something. That was worth everything. Stand up, she said. He blinked. Is that a yes or stand up? I'm not accepting a proposal from someone on their knees. We're equals, or this doesn't work at all. Hope flickered across his face. He stood. Ask me again, Lydia said. Properly. Adrian took her hands, held them gently. Lydia Hawthorne, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on someone who doesn't deserve you, but will spend every day trying to earn the honor anyway? Will you let me love you the way you deserve? Honestly, completely, without performance or pretense? One condition, she said. Anything. If I say yes, we do this as partners, not Duke and fortunate wife, not savior and rescued. Equal partners building something neither of us could build alone. No more performing for society, no more hiding. Just us, being real. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I can live with that. Can you? Because, Adrian, this won't be easy. Society will judge, people will talk, some will never accept me. You'll lose opportunities, connections, respect from people who matter to you. They don't matter to me. You matter to me. He squeezed her hands. Everyone else can burn. That's a very dramatic answer. I'm a very dramatic person. You should probably know that before accepting. Despite everything, the crowd, the pressure, the absurdity of the situation, Lydia laughed. Fine. Yes, I'll marry you, you dramatic disaster of a man. The ballroom erupted, not in judgment, in applause. Adrian pulled her close, kissed her in front of everyone, and Lydia felt something fundamental shift in the world. This was real. They were real. Everything else could sort itself out later. When they finally broke apart, Lady Ashford was beaming like she'd orchestrated the entire thing. Well, she said, voice carrying, I did promise this evening would be memorable. I'd say a public proposal counts. Congratulations to you both. The crowd pressed in, some with genuine congratulations, others with thinly veiled curiosity, all wanting to be part of the story. Lydia navigated it with Adrian's hand firmly in hers, Caroline running interference when needed, her father appearing at some point to glare at anyone who got too intrusive. But through it all, one thought kept circling her mind. They'd done it. Faced society together, proven their connection was strong enough to survive scrutiny. The hard part was over, or so she thought. 3 hours into the ball, Lord Pembroke approached. He was drunk, not falling down drunk, but enough that his filter had disappeared entirely. So the magistrate's daughter finally landed herself a duke, he said loudly enough to turn heads. Must be quite the satisfaction, Miss Hawthorne, turning humiliation into opportunity. Quite the mercenary strategy. Adrian went rigid beside her. Lord Pembroke, he said, voice dangerous. You're drunk. I suggest you leave before you say something you'll regret. Regret? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. She nursed you back to health, and suddenly you're proposing marriage? Seems convenient. Almost like she planned it. That's enough, Lydia said coldly. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you've taken a terrible situation and manipulated it into social advancement. Can't blame you, really. Clever, in a calculating sort of way. The crowd around them had gone silent again, waiting to see how this would play out. Adrian stepped forward. You're going to apologize, right now, or I'm going to make very sure every club in London knows exactly what kind of man you are. Threatening me, Your Grace? How noble! Not a threat, a promise. Apologize to my fiancé or face consequences. Pembroke laughed. Your fiancé? That's rich. 3 months ago you declared her unworthy of notice. Now suddenly she's the love of your life? Forgive me for being skeptical about which version is the performance. Lydia felt Adrian's hand tighten on hers. Felt the rage building in him, the old instinct to lash out and destroy anyone who challenged him. She squeezed back. Wait. You want to know which version is performance? She said, voice clear and calm. Neither. Both. People are complicated, Lord Pembroke. We contain multitudes. Adrian was performing when he humiliated me, performing strength to hide vulnerability. And he's performing now, performing confidence to hide the terror that I'll realize he's right, that he's not worthy, that I'm making a mistake. She turned to Adrian. But here's what he doesn't understand, what you don't understand. I'm not marrying his performance. I'm marrying the man underneath it, the one who's scared and broken and trying desperately to be better. That's real. That's worth building a life on. She looked back at Pembroke. So yes, I turned humiliation into opportunity, not through calculation or manipulation, through choosing to see someone's potential instead of their worst moment. If that makes me mercenary, I'll wear the label proudly. The silence that followed was different than before. This wasn't shock or scandal or judgment. This was respect. Lady Pemberton stepped forward, the same woman who'd called Lydia poor thing months ago. Well said, Miss Hawthorne, well said indeed. She turned to Pembroke. And you, sir, should be ashamed. Leave, now, before you embarrass yourself further. Others joined in, a chorus of voices telling Pembroke to go, defending Lydia with a vehemence that surprised her. He left, humiliated and furious. Adrian pulled Lydia close. You didn't need me to defend you, he said quietly. No, but it was nice knowing you were ready to. Always, for the rest of our lives, however long that is. That's a long time to promise. Then I'd better get started proving I mean it. The rest of the ball passed in a blur of congratulations and questions and endless speculation about wedding plans they hadn't made yet. By the time they left at midnight, Lydia was exhausted but satisfied. They'd done it. Faced society. Won. The carriage ride back to her father's house was quiet. Caroline had gone ahead, giving them privacy. Do you regret it? Adrian asked. Saying yes? Ask me again in 20 years. Fair? He was quiet for a moment. I meant what I said. Every word. About loving you. About wanting partnership. About being willing to face whatever comes. I know, I wouldn't have said yes if I thought you were lying. What changed? Between arriving at the ball terrified and accepting a proposal you didn't expect? Lydia considered the question. I saw you choose me over comfort, over approval, over everything you'd built your entire life around. That's not performance, Adrian. That's sacrifice. And if you're willing to sacrifice for me, then maybe I can trust you with the parts of myself I've kept protected. I won't let you down. You probably will, at some point. We'll both fail each other because that's what people do. She leaned against his shoulder. But if we're honest about it, if we keep choosing each other even when it's hard, maybe we build something strong enough to survive our failures. That's not very romantic. I'm not very romantic. You should probably know that before marrying me. He kissed the top of her head. Good thing I'm dramatic enough for both of us. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony at Blackmore Hall. Not because they were hiding, because they wanted something real instead of performative. Family, close friends, and a handful of people who genuinely cared about them rather than the spectacle. Caroline stood as Lydia's witness. Her father walked her down the makeshift aisle in the garden, and Adrian's valet, the one who'd stayed through the fever, stood for him. The vows were simple. No grand promises of perfection, just honest commitments to keep trying, keep choosing each other, keep building something worth protecting. When they kissed, sealing the marriage, Lydia felt something settle into place. Not completion, she was complete on her own, but partnership. The kind built on honesty instead of expectation, on effort instead of performance. The kind that might actually last. The reception was loud and joyful, and nothing like a society wedding. Her father gave a speech about choosing happiness over approval. Caroline told embarrassing stories about their childhood. Adrian's estate workers, who'd watched him transform over months, toasted to the woman who'd saved their duke. As the sun set over the moors, Lydia found herself standing at the terrace railing, looking out over the wild landscape that had become home. Adrian appeared beside her, wrapped an arm around her waist. Happy? He asked. Exhausted, overwhelmed, terrified about what we've gotten ourselves into. She leaned into him. But yes, happy. You? More than I've ever been. More than I knew was possible. That's setting the bar pretty high for the rest of our lives. Then I'd better keep working to clear it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. "You know what the best part is?" Lydia said eventually. "What?" "We didn't get a fairy tale ending. We got something better, a real one. Messy and complicated and full of people who'll judge us. But ours, built by us, on our terms. I can live with that." "Good, because you're stuck with it now." "Stuck with you, you mean?" "Same thing." He laughed, kissed her temple. "I love you, Lydia Blackmore, even when you're being difficult. Especially when I'm being difficult. Keeps you honest." "That it does." Later, when the guests had gone and the house had quieted, they found themselves in the study where so much of their relationship had been built. Lydia settled into the chair that had become hers over months of working beside Adrian on estate business. He took his usual spot across the desk. "So," she said, "what do we do now?" "Now we figure out what comes next. Together." "Any ideas?" "A few. There's estate business that needs attention. Tenant concerns. Your father mentioned wanting help with some legal reforms. Thought we might offer our assistance." "Building a partnership that extends beyond just us?" "Exactly. Using what we have, title, resources, your brilliant mind, to actually do something meaningful instead of just performing nobility." Lydia smiled. "I like that plan. There's more." "Oh?" "I was thinking, what if we made Blackmore Hall a place for people like us? People who don't fit society's molds, who need space to figure out who they are without judgment." He leaned forward. "We have the resources, the space, and after everything we've been through, I think we understand better than most what it's like to need refuge." "You want to turn your ancestral estate into a sanctuary for misfits?" "I want to turn it into something useful, something real, something that matters beyond just maintaining tradition." He caught her hand across the desk. "What do you think?" Lydia looked at him, really looked. Saw not the Ice Duke who destroyed her, not the fever-broken man she'd saved, but something new. Someone who'd taken his worst qualities and was actively working to transform them into something better. "I think," she said slowly, "that we're going to scandalize society all over again." "Probably. And I think our children are going to grow up very confused about whether their parents are nobles or revolutionaries." "Why not both?" "Because that's exhausting, Adrian. Good thing we have each other to share the exhaustion." She laughed, stood, moved around the desk to settle into his lap like she'd done 100 times over the past months. "Yes," she said. "Let's do it. Build something meaningful, scandalize society, raise confused children, all of it. You're sure?" "I'm sure I want to try. And if we fail, at least we'll fail spectacularly together. That's all I can ask." They sat there in the study, wrapped in each other and plans for the future, as night fell completely over Blackmore Hall. Outside, the moors stretched endlessly, wild and beautiful and completely indifferent to human concerns about status or propriety or what society deemed acceptable. Inside, two people who'd hurt each other, saved each other, and ultimately chosen each other began building something neither could have imagined when this started. Not a fairy tale. Something better. A real life. Messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Years later, when people asked Lydia about her marriage, she never gave them the romantic story they expected. She told them the truth. It was hard. They fought, failed each other, struggled with old patterns and new challenges. But they kept choosing each other anyway. They turned Blackmore Hall into exactly what Adrian had envisioned, a place where people who didn't fit could find space to breathe. They worked with Lydia's father on legal reforms. They scandalized society regularly and stopped caring what anyone thought. They had 3 children who grew up confused about their parents' status, but clear on their values. Be real, be brave, be kind when you can, and fierce when you must. And on quiet evenings, when the children were in bed and the work was done, they'd find each other in the study where everything had begun. "Still happy?" Adrian would ask. "Still terrified," Lydia would answer. "But yes, still happy. You? More than I deserve. You deserve exactly what you've earned. No more, no less." Then I'll keep earning it. See that you do." It wasn't perfection, but it was real. And in the end, that made all the difference.